I'd like to call to order the January 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission. The first hearing tonight is a request for determination of applicability for 49 Lovers Lane. We have an after-the-fact RDA request for the installation of split rail fences. Do we have a proponent? Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if the commission remembers, if you don't mind, I'll just introduce it. We had this prior as a violation in terms of, activity taking place within the buffer zone without permission. And it was a split rail fence along the driveway and along the road on Lover's Lane. The Conservation Commission instructed the Gaudenzis here to file an after-the-fact RDA. And so it is up to us kind of to decide today whether or not a split rail fence right on the outer edge of the 50-foot no disturb and the other one in the 100-foot constitutes an issue for habitat or any other issue, and whether or not you would approve it tonight with the recommendation of doing some plantings that we have talked about with the Gaudenzis as well, or not. My recommendation is that this is fairly benign. It's right up against the road, and there are other issues that may have come up, visibility, have nothing to do with conservation, unfortunately, and are not in our purview. So that the split rail, the few sections of split rail fence that are in our jurisdiction, being next to the road and next to the driveway, I don't think hinder the wetland resource in any way. And I would recommend an approval with a positive 2B. You're not confirming the wetland lines. It's an old site plan that we use, so we're not confirming the wetland lines, but that work is in the buffer zone only with a -3.
Thank you, Amy. Any additional comments?
No, I mean, last time we met, you said that you wanted some kind of a corrective plan for plantings, and stuff like that. And Amy was nice enough to come out to the property, and beyond the 100-foot line, she showed me some plantings that do comply to the natural area there where the wetlands are. And so she said to me, she says, in the springtime, if you take some of these out and put them up.
Thin them out, essentially.
Yeah.
It's got some sweet pepper bush and
I personally
viburnums.
prefer to plant in the fall than the spring, because, you do it in the springtime, if you get a drought, they won't take, and stuff like that. So I took some out already about a month ago, and I've already put in about 12 plantings. I don't know if that's enough for you. If you want more, I can do more.
Well, we'll have to look, and generally spring is a better planting season.
Really?
Very much so. So I'll let other
Well,
commissioners
these have been
weigh
in for about a month and a half, and they're all green. They're still green.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's been really, really cold, so the
Yeah.
chances of them making it through this
We'll
winter
see.
with just being planted are tough. So we'll have to see about that.
What are you proposing, Amy, for a mitigation ratio? It's kind of a tough footprint to apply
It is a tough footprint to
typical 3 to
apply.
1.
Hold on one second. What did I recommend here?
What footage are we working on?
That's the
That's
question.
the question. It's hard. It's, roughly 23 by 8 is the fence, and you're talking a footprint of, not even if you look at where the posts are or where there's just the fence is. Sorry, the plantings just said the split rail fence, the plans just said the split rail fence detail. So essentially, the plantings would go 4 to 5 feet on center, mostly in this area as you're looking at your plan, because it's a little bit sparse there on that, within the 50-foot area along this section of the driveway. To be done in coordination with our office
Oh,
here.
you just
Yeah.
show me what you want to have done, and
No,
I'll
I
do it for you.
Any comments from the commissioners? Paul, do you have any comments?
No, I went by and took a look at it. I think it's pretty benign.
I don't have any problems with this going forward.
Carolyn?
I don't have any problems with this either. I would ask you, though, in the future, if you want to do something, please come to us first.
Okay.
Yes,
It's
we
fair
learned our
enough.
lesson.
Any comments, Rob?
I'm good with it.
Okay. Any comments from the audience? No? Yeah, it's an interesting case for us, you know, it is the no disturb zone, but we have variance provisions. We're looking to have a clear benefit to the resource and no impact to the resource. This one applies, I think, to having no impact to the resource. So, I think it does fit our variance clause. Do we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for determination of applicability for 49 Lovers Lane with a positive 2B determination and a negative 3,
Second?
as well as mitigation
Plantings.
plantings, but we haven't determined the ratio.
It's really hard to determine a ratio here. I mean, we had talked something
Yeah.
along the lines of 10 to
Okay.
12 plants, I believe, when we were on
Yeah.
site, spaced
We
about 4
leave
feet
that for an
apart.
administrative decision in the spring?
Yeah, I can put the condition on the, I can put a condition on the
Okay.
permit.
Okay, so we have a seconded.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Please sign. Rob, I'm gonna have you be the keeper of the permits.
Thank you, Amy.
We will get this to you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And we'll talk in the spring.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
sounds good. You're welcome.
I'm up
Thank
to
you
the
very much.
task.
We have to we'll announce the next hearing, but they're gonna continue. It was my mistake on the dates.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 23-1 Snow Inn Road, and this is going to be continued to January 17th. So if I can get a motion to continue it, we'll do so.
I'll make a motion to continue the notice of intent for 23-1 Snow Inn Road until our next meeting. Next meeting?
January
17th.
17th, yeah.
January 17th.
I'll second.
Seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, the motion carries. Next, we have a proposal for 22 Harwich Pines to install and maintain a seasonal dock on Long Pond.
Thank you.
Good evening, David Little from Ryder and Wilcox, representing Marilyn and Kevin Joyce. I think Amy's been expecting this for a while. The Joyces purchased this property many years ago, and when they did purchase it, there was an existing dock on the property that had an interim license. And the proper procedure when a dock has an interim license and it changes hands is that the new owner is required to get a new interim license. And they did not follow through on that in a timely manner. The situation now is that they are selling their house, and I am now working not only with them, but I'm working with the buyer, and we are proposing to apply for a permanent 30-year license for the dock that's existed on the site for many years. For those of you that went to the site, you saw the aluminum dock sections down near the bottom of the stairway. It is proposed to be seasonal. It's aluminum in nature with spacing in between the deck boards. We have provided you with the plan and also a profile showing typical sections and the depth at ordinary high water where it complies with the regulations. We haven't proposed to change it from the originally licensed pier. We're proposing to keep everything the same. If we're successful here, I'm going to proceed and file for a Chapter 91 waterways license with the state. I did speak with both Matt Hart and John Rendon, the harbor master, because generally, in the past, I've always appeared before the Waterways Committee before coming here, and they indicated via emails, which I've shared with Amy, that it was not necessary since this was an existing pier. It's been there. They didn't feel the need to have it come before Waterways. So it's my understanding this is the only board we need to go before getting a new license for the pier. So if I can answer any questions, be happy to do so.
Comments, Amy?
We'll just quickly run through a couple of the performance standards. It is less than 80 feet long from the mean annual high water line of the pond. It's no more than 4 feet wide. This is a proposal. T or L shaped at the end. This is an L. There has to be at least 2.5 feet of water. There's actually going to be about 4 to 4.5 for this proposal. So technically it could be shorter, but in this instance, I mean, if they can go longer and still be under our 80, seasonal aluminum dock, no piles, it might actually be better to have it longer, so that the props don't dredge the bottom. The float can be no more than 200 square feet. There's not really a float here, but the L is 5 by 16. It is 65 feet from adjacent structures, so it appears there's no other structures shown on the plan on adjacent properties. The only thing is, it is 7 feet from the property line, and sometimes Chapter 91 likes to see 25 feet from property lines. This did have an interim license before, but it's more for navigational purposes. It's not really for conservation purposes, the setbacks from lot lines, so I don't think it should influence our decision here tonight about that they don't meet the 25-foot setback, and I think we should leave that to Chapter 91 to determine. It would be seasonal, recommended between May 15th and October 15th annually. Storage up above. Right now it's kind of being stored on itself at the bottom, but you know, upland storage from the top of the coastal bank from here on out. Again, big feet, anchors instead of piles, which is much less invasive. So we could also condition, you know, installation not to occur during a main, you know, the herring migration or something if we wanted to. But with that, I would recommend approval. It meets all of our standards. And it did have an interim license prior.
Amy, I did get a letter from the Harwich Pines Association.
Oh, good.
I indicated that we would need a letter from them acknowledging that it doesn't, it's not 25 feet away from the property line, and they have no objection to it being 7 feet away.
Good.
Thank you, Amy. Any comments?
I just want to make sure that the storage will definitely be upland. Had I known that it was going to be just pulled out and put on the shore, I would have recommended it be put in the driveway. I'll certainly make sure of that, and a condition to that effect will certainly take care of that.
It is raised up. It's not sitting on the shore. It's on the shore, the most landward piece.
Yeah.
So it's not resting on the ground or anything, which is good.
Any comments, Karen? Rob?
No comments.
Okay, do we have a motion? Any comments from the audience first? None? Motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the request for 22 Harwich Pines to install their new dock.
Second?
Second.
Second? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. None opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. I understand you already have the day off for tomorrow.
Makes the meeting not so bad tonight. Should give Nikki the day off.
Okay, next we have a notice of intent for the 5 Weeks Road. It's a proposal to remove 45 trees and replant with 120 plantings.
My name's Dan O'Leary. I'm representing Jim Killian. And Amy and I have been over the property twice. and I assume you have as well. And a couple of things. One, the tree removal is to create a vista for the new property owner, and the other trees are to remove to recreate a driveway, which is being encroached upon by older trees and a lot of pines, and to then remove all the creosote timbers that are on all sides of the driveway, as well as a creosote timbered wall that is by the greenhouse, and to replace those, one with cobble for the driveway and a fieldstone wall for the wall that is presently there on the creosote wall near the greenhouse. And I'm here to answer your questions. I didn't understand there was another O'Leary in town.
There is.
Okay.
Comments, Amy?
Too many. I've been working closely with Dan on this. When they got the job, called me up right away and had me down. And typically when you see how many trees potentially could come down there, you kind of say, well, that's kind of a lot. But on the other hand, if you go to the site, there's an awful lot more. It's a very, very crowded site. The house is almost and the area being swallowed up. And there's very little light reaching down to the ground. There's actually really no ground covers, so to speak, on the property, in part due to the poor soil, but also due to the shade on the site. So what this proposal would do is accomplish a few things. It would allow more light down to the ground layer, which would allow the proposal for 140 new plantings: low bush blueberry, high bush, arrowwood viburnum, sweet pepper, sheep laurel, winterberry, holly, and inkberry, which will do very well on the site, I think. And that would be that nice yellow buffer strip that you see on the plan to what is actually the Andrews River. The trees were picked, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, primarily the trees that were picked are either compromised in some way, dead, or so overcrowded that they're never going to reach maturity. There are a few. This is also riverfront area, so it's not only the 100-foot wetland setback, and the 100-foot wetland setback goes through kind of the driveway island that's there now, but it also extends to the back of the property behind the house, because it is 200-foot riverfront area. So while most of the trees are in the front of the house, the part of the 45 is in the back as well. And a lot of the ones in the back and sides of the house are for safety purposes, for removal. So in general, I think this is going to enhance the riverfront area with 140 new native plantings. The view corridor is actually fairly condensed from what we typically see. There's some trees that are in the view corridor that would stay, with the lower branches being pruned up, some of the shrubs being pruned down. To the north, there's no proposal there. It's a very nice. It's nice and lush and thick. So I think this will not only improve the riverfront area and the edge right against the river, but it will allow the light in to allow other things to actually grow on the site. It's too overcrowded. So I would recommend approval, and I'd be happy to continue working with them.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Any comments, Paula?
No.
Carolyn?
No.
Rob?
We're gonna do some kind of temporary irrigation for a couple years to,
It would be nice to be able to do that, to maintain it'd be above ground, and it'll be temporary.
do they have an existing underground system
They do
there?
not.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I should definitely do that.
We can condition that.
Sorry?
We can condition the temporary above-ground drip
Yeah,
irrigation for a
right.
few growing seasons.
Mhm.
Couple questions. In the plans, the 100-foot wetland setback line, is that actually the 50? Is that just mislabeled?
Nope.
That's the 100, so that,
It is actually the 100.
okay.
Um,
Is the 50 not?
The 50 is not shown. I mean,
Okay. Do you think it should be there?
It's something, if this is to scale, and this plan is to scale, that I can easily scale out on the plan and put it on the approved plans. You know, it's pretty much halfway. You see, edge of wetland, that's where it would
Right.
start. It's actually a coastal bank there.
Okay,
So we could easily scale to show that.
okay, if we can get that modification.
There's
And,
only a few trees actually in the 50 that would be removed.
Right. Any consideration for red cedar among the possible plantings?
If that's what you would like. And we could probably incorporate them in the back, in the north corner,
Yeah.
all right?
I think it just, I'm just curious if that was a species that you thought about, or it can be nice along a river edge. I know the view is important, so
Yeah.
you don't want them to be too large, but I'm just curious if that was considered.
It would have to be in some, because the rest of the site is pretty densely vegetated with large oaks. You have to make sure that there's enough light, but certainly it would be something we could condition to discuss on site to see if
Sure.
in the northwest corner of the property, if there could be the addition of a couple of cedars.
Yep. And just to confirm what I think is true, there'll be no additional creation of lawn in that 52 and 100-foot zone.
The only thing that's gonna be there is a Harmony blend seed, all right, which is basically a Cape Cod, and it's a low-maintenance lawn.
Right.
All right, but no, there'll be no irrigation, there'll be no fine fescues, it will be just basically to maintain the solvency of the land.
How about fertilization of the lawn?
It does, it's not in the plan, all right? I don't think I'm not asking for it,
Harmony doesn't really
it really doesn't need it.
need much. Maybe a one-time organic at the time
Holster or
of
something?
installation, a one-time organic outside the 50, at the time of seeding. But other than that, Harmony shouldn't need it.
Yeah, it's a really drought type of resistant new product for the Cape for the last couple of years,
Okay, so
specifically for this type of environment.
given the riverfront location, would there be objections to having a condition to have no fertilization going forward after that initial application?
That's more than fine,
52 and 100?
absolutely.
Okay. Any other conditions that we want to put in?
Do you wanna do some like broadcast sprinkler heads in that grass area as well?
We're gonna do that above ground.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that whole area, the yellow area where we're gonna put the mitigating shrubs
Yep.
and the lawn would be watered for a period of time, depending on when we get going on it and what time of year it is.
We can probably do 3 years, right? Give them
Yep, you can do, I mean, that's at the commission's discretion for,
plenty of time to
Oh, yeah.
get it established and then maybe touch it up in the fall and
Mhm.
see what happens.
Yep.
You're not gonna do a bunch of fescues, so there shouldn't be a bunch of dieback.
It's a long project because if you've been there, you see that a lot of work has to be done after the trees are out, and a lot of other things have to be, the cobble, the walls, all those timbers have to come out, so it's gonna be a long process to get this thing done.
You're not gonna store those, you're gonna pull those creosote ties right out of there.
Yeah,
Not
they're
gonna
gone.
store them at all.
Yeah, right to S and J.
Lucky them.
Yeah, good. Let them go. They're horrible. They're really horrible.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the request at 5 Weeks Road to remove the 45 trees and replant according to your diagram with the addition of consideration of cedars to
Correct.
be added.
Yeah, Amy and I will address that in the spring.
Above-ground irrigation
Mhm.
for 3 years.
And no fertilization in the 50 to 100?
After the initial planting,
No
right?
no fertilization in the 0 to 50,
Absolutely,
period, yeah.
absolutely.
period. No fertilization in the 50 to 200.
Riverfront. Yeah.
Well, that includes flower gardens.
See, on the other side of the house, I don't know if I have a problem with that.
It's something that we could put in the orders of conditions.
Okay, keep in mind that.
Mhm.
Can you clean that proposal up?
Second? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
you.
Thank you.
Have a Happy New Year. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome. We will prepare the draft orders and sign them at the next meeting.
Okay.
So your permit will be out after that. We'll call you when it's ready. Right?
Okay, next we have a notice of intent for 10 Springtide Lane, Vista pruning.
My name is George Malone. I'm the owner of YDS Incorporated. I'm the one moving forward with David and Ruth Ann to regain their property location. Try to get it back to what it was initially from the original photos. Just trying to move forward on the project to regain some vista pruning because the property has not been maintained. And that's where we stand.
We bought the house 2 years ago, and it was a disaster, the whole thing. We've worked on the front and the inside, and now we want next year to be able to start on our deck in the back of the house. And with total respect for everything, but there are a lot of dead trees, invasive stuff. I don't know where to begin to say. I know you were there, somebody was there today, because I saw the footprints. So, one of our things is that because we don't know what we're gonna be allowed to do, we really can't say what we wanna do, but I know you want to know what we're gonna do. So,
Thank you. Any comments, Amy?
Yeah, I think we need a more substantial plan for this.
Okay.
We typically look for a 3 to 5 year a land management plan, if you will, detailing the different activities, more detail into, I know you said there's some invasives here in Bittersweet, a little bit more detail on the invasive population, how you're proposing to remove it. Is it mechanical removal? Is it by hand? Is there a limit of work so to be put up so it doesn't go past a certain point? And then what's the treatment look like? We have a lot of examples that I could give you of projects similar to this that have been approved for what essentially you want to accomplish, which is to remove the invasives, maybe get rid of some of the damaged and dead trees, some of the trees, the oak saplings, the resprouts there,
Right.
How to manage them in a proper way, because they haven't been managed properly in the past, they've just been topped. So we're just looking for, I think we need a little bit more clarification, and then also, number of the types of mitigation plantings, a little bit more specific. So first, you kind of have to look about what we're proposing to clear, and then take that area and say, well, what could fit there in terms of number and type of plantings. So I just think we need a little bit more of an idea. And the path is something I think we should talk about. It's, there was a path prior, and Ruth Ann, we spoke on the phone
Right.
today, and we talked, this is really just a path to be able to traverse the property. But there's something we want to, it does go pretty far down the bank. It is a steep bank. Are you proposing any type of steps or hardscape, or is it just gonna be on grade, chipped? And
Well, where
could
the,
we get it out of the 50 type thing?
well, where the path is now, that would seem to be, to me, it seemed to be the most non-aggressive, just go down,
Mm-hmm.
just regain a walkable path for them for their property. Down through the middle where it's slashed, right after the bird feeders there, it drops off.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might have pushed a lot of the original fill there, so that changed the grade there. So
Yeah.
it's really not walkable for
Right.
a straight down.
Right.
So we were just trying to assume the most natural path, and we want to do, and we're gonna do a 3-to-1
Yep.
to whatever we remove to put back, that's our plan.
Okay.
We did not go through and, honeysuckle, bittersweet, you know.
No.
But we're just gonna, anything that we do take out, if there's invasives,
Right.
if we do take it out, then it's gonna be, you know,
A lot, and upon visiting the site too, a lot of, there's not as much invasives as you see in other sites. It's a lot of mismanaged oak saplings.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
are on
there's
the
a lot of
property.
that.
So, and I can definitely see, I mean, the vegetation goes right up to the back deck.
yeah,
out
the
there.
the 5 feet, I was telling.
There's also
Ruthann-
vineyard in there too. There's
What?
grapes.
Oh. Vineyard.
I don't know, they had it all over the deck and everywhere, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there is lots of grapes back there in case you, Chardonnay.
We see these proposals a lot, types of proposals, so it's a very doable thing. I think we need a few more specifics, and I'm
Okay.
happy to work with you on that,
Okay,
so.
great.
Okay. Any comments from commissioners?
Do we want to put them on the next agenda for the next meeting?
I mean, do you have any feedback, other than what I've said, do you have any feedback for them on what's
I think it's
proposed and
just-
what you'd like to see, so we can,
It's just a matter of just being more specific of what you're taking out when you're replacing it with.
Okay.
Do we need an actual wetlands delineation here, or is this plan sufficient with more detail?
this plan was taken from a survey plan that was done, probably about 10 years ago. And due to the steepness of this bank, I don't foresee the wetland edge changing in this location, so, I don't think a new one's needed in this location.
Will there be any changes in the 50 to 100 foot from the resource area in terms of lawn expansion? Or
No.
what are your hopes to have it look like in the 50 to 100?
No, the non-jurisdiction is from basically the end of the deck to the 100-foot, and we just wanted to get that cleaned out and just have it be like just mulch or just.
Grasses or,
Well,
Is that the
ornamental.
bird feeding area as shown
No,
on your
that's
plan?
from the deck to the X's that are on the plan. That
Okay.
was
Oh,
the,
okay.
the limit of work before.
Mhm.
Because as Ruth Ann said, there are plants up against the house, and it's just, we wanted to get that back primarily.
Mhm.
And, put it back to the way it, was, so that they can traverse.
I mean, so do you want specific trees, specific?
I think maybe it would be a worthwhile thing for you and I to meet out on
Okay.
site, maybe sometime early next week.
Fine.
And of course Ruth Ann as well, if you'd like to. Just so we have a better understanding
Okay.
of what you want to do.
Okay.
And then we can,
And meet at the next
Amend.
meeting.
Okay.
that might be the
Little
most
more-
expeditious thing.
More direction on how that 50 to 100 is going to look going forward, types of plants.
Yeah, I think from the house looking down, it's gonna pretty much look exactly the same. We just wanna get rid of some of the, scrub oaks and stuff that's been pruned down to the ground. It's multiplied up, and you
Right.
can walk it.
Yep.
And then do a
No.
3-to-1, and then,
Sounds good. I guess we need a motion to continue. Do you want to meet
Yeah,
on the 17th, January 17th?
yes. Can I contact you Friday at the 432-8230 number?
yeah, let me give you my cell phone. It'd be
Go ahead.
better. It's 508
Yep,
294
94.
5570. Whatever's convenient for you.
Yeah, it'll most likely be Tuesday morning,
Absolutely fine.
so Tuesday morning of next week. With the storm, and then I have some 20-some-odd AmeriCorps members helping me on Tuesday of next week's, or on Monday of next week, so I won't be doing Monday. But
Okay.
Tuesday morning.
Perfect.
Do you want to just pencil in now Tuesday, 10 a.m.?
That'd be great.
Let's do that. So yes, continue,
Thanks, Amy.
17th.
I move that we continue the hearing to January 17th, 2018.
I second.
Seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. None opposed?
Is it okay if I'm not here?
Yeah, I can represent her.
Okay.
Sure.
You can
Yeah, that's
do it.
fine.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Did we vote?
We voted to, yes.
We did, okay.
Yep. Make sure you catch me on that. Okay, next we have a notice of intent for 68 Smith Street, a proposal to construct a 24 by 30-foot garage and driveway extension.
So if you would just describe what you would like to do
Okay,
and who you are for the
Oh.
record.
Paul Norton, my wife Maria, we're residents of 68 Smith Street in West Harwich. We want to build a garage, 24 by 30 garage, detached from the existing home there, and that's pretty much it. Sweetser Engineering decided not to show up, and neither did the builder, so we're on our
There's
own.
Robin.
Okay.
So I'll do my best.
Your engineer's here.
Oh, there we go.
I'll give up my seat.
Right into the hot seat.
You're on.
It's okay. I was just touting how
Going a little
prompt you
quick,
were.
we're going a little quickly today.
I just left the Brewster Conservation Commission, which I had a 6:30 hearing at.
Oh, boy.
Sounds like a party.
I have the green cards here if you need me.
That's fine. Just give them to me when we're done here.
This is a parcel of land
Thank you.
which has been in litigation with the town of Harwich almost as long as I've been surveying land. This is a parcel of land which in my business is referred to as Smalley versus Harwich. It was a subdivision plan that divided 3 houses onto 3 separate lots. The town refused to endorse it, they sued. The land court required that the planning board endorse the plan forthwith. They couldn't find it. It was redrawn for the new owner, who happened to be Paul Cochran, who was our building inspector at the time. Plan was then endorsed. Apparently, in looking at the house, the house on this lot was torn down and another one was put up sometime after that fact. It had a septic upgrade done a couple of years ago. It's a raised system. What we propose to do is to put a 24 by 30 garage located back of the house at the minimum setback from the lot line. We are just over the 50-foot no disturb area. There are trees in the vicinity. We did stake it. We did not stake the work limit, only because it goes from the shed directly to the deck around the corner of it. I didn't see the sense of putting extra stakes out there, which would confuse people more than just showing where the proposed garage is. The driveway is an impervious surface. We will continue that also.
Thank you. Any comments, Amy?
Yes. Proposed garage to be on a slab foundation.
It is in a flood zone, so it will have to be an engineered foundation.
Okay.
Because it is not habitable space.
Right.
It does not have to be elevated, it just has to have
The
the
vents.
breakout panels or the
Right.
smart vents into it.
How deep do you have to dig for? Is it almost like piling? Not pilings, but underground
We're
anchors?
required to have at least 4 feet of cover over the footings.
Okay.
And it's not by choice.
Just curious.
Quite frankly, in this area, we will probably be sitting in water table at that point, and I don't think that it's gonna freeze if it's underwater.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because you're pretty low elevation here. So it is within land subject to coastal storm flow. It's not just within the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland itself. So it will need to be flood compliant in terms of garage in a flood zone. Say for utilities and whatnot, and having flood vents. It's an AE zone. So the only comment I have is typically with any new construction in the buffer zone, we've seen it many of times, is there should be some mitigation offered. We are allowed to in our regulations, we're allowed to, the Conservation Commission's allowed to request mitigation. You know, you're putting a new 24 by 30 garage, so some planting mitigation, even though the site is very well vegetated, should be part of this proposal. That's pretty standard. So it's something that I'm more than happy to work with you on. I don't think, because of the property and how well vegetated it is, I don't think you're gonna get a 2-to-1 mitigation ratio, but I think you could get a 1-to-1, so whatever 24 by 30 is in square footage, I think with plantings in primarily in the 0 to 50 foot buffer to the wetland, I think it could be accomplished. And if we were able to look at that, I could recommend approval of this.
You're looking at 720 is the
Thank
actual
you.
number. We don't have a problem with that. We can replace whatever trees we happen to take out of that area. I would say probably a count of the number of trees that are gonna have to come down, not only for the garage, but also for the driveway. And do a replanting in that same, allow me to go from 0 to 100 as opposed to just in the 50 to 100. Because I think it would be quite dense, and because that's primarily where the house and the septic is located, and the garage.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that it may be something that we need noted on the plan a little bit more clearly about where things would be. And
We'll make
not
it-
much of a shrub layer there, so native shrubs as opposed to a lot more trees might be more applicable in this site, more shade-tolerant species.
I would say, suggest the area somewhere between the SAS and the garage would be an ideal area in order
Yep.
to restrict access through.
Yep.
Any comments?
No. What did you say the driveway was going to be composed of? The driveway.
The driveway, currently it's a shell driveway, and we're gonna leave it as an impervious surface. It'll probably be just a continuation of the shell driveway,
As a this is, I'm confused. I
a
thought
pervious surface.
a pervious surface, one that will drain.
Yes.
Okay, that's my clarification. And the garage, is that going to have, what's it called, an apron or a cement?
Usually
Part
I've seen garages built without aprons and with aprons. These days, unfortunately, I see more without aprons, and I think they have problems. I would suggest that it have an apron. I haven't seen the building plans for it, but usually an apron is usually part of the pour of the concrete floor, and usually it's no more than 2 feet out. And that's usually done at a pitch, to make sure the water goes away from the garage, but it's also done to allow you to bring the car into the garage without breaking off right at the edge.
That's my question.
Rob, any questions?
Yeah, what's the depth of good draining sand there, do you know?
What was the depth of? What was the depth of?
Good draining sand?
Or depth to groundwater.
Typically in this area, you're looking at a water table in there of about elevation 3 to 3.5. We're looking at ground contour in this area at about 5, so it's only about 2 foot, 1.5 to 2 foot down.
Are you gonna do gutters on this building? Gonna do gutters? Gutters?
Sure.
You want gutters,
Yeah.
downspouts,
I'm
and
just trying to figure out if
into
you're gonna control
probably infiltrators, only because
Yeah,
they're shallow.
drywall won't.
A dry well
won't
won't
fit
work
here.
because it'll be sitting in water.
So either like a drip line around the edge of the building, all the way around of stone, so it just falls down, or gutters into
That's actually a little
into
easier.
infiltrators.
Do is you create an area along the edge of the driveway, along the edge of the slope of the roof.
Slope then, sure.
About 2 foot wide, so that when the water runs off, it has someplace to go,
A foot.
rather than
Foot deep,
out towards the
You wanna end up
wetland.
with a swamp there since you're so close to the water
Yeah.
table too.
right.
Agree.
We usually look for dry wells, but they won't fit really here.
No.
So a drip trench around the edge of the building, I think would be sufficient here.
Would shell be enough? Would that be proper?
No,
Not shell.
Like 3/4 inch native gravel
3/4
is
inch native
perfect.
stone.
Are you constrained by setbacks with your,
The minimum setback is 20 foot
20
from the
feet.
sideline. Ideally, we'd much rather move the garage closer to the lot line. However, zoning prohibits us. It means that we're gonna have to dogleg to get into the garage.
right?
And moving it closer to the dwelling doesn't really do much for the distance to wetland,
Right.
and they also can't move that much closer because of the septic.
That's my concern. I think you've got, 6.5 feet to your 50-foot line, and you're gonna have some runoff issues there, some disruption to deal with your runoff. I'd like to see the structure pulled back a little bit somehow.
The only reason that we pushed it that far back was so that we could have a T-type turnaround rather than have to back all the way out to Smith Street. And Amy was not in when we filed this. We had talked to your assistant, and she said with the number of trees that were coming out, she suggested an NOI versus an RDA.
Right,
And so that's the reason why it was an NOI.
yeah, and it's a fairly good-sized structure within jurisdiction, so.
Right. Yeah, usually we can find room for 2 to 1, and it's not gonna happen here, right? I mean, it's not enough.
No, I mean, you'd overcrowd things and they wouldn't survive. The site is very well naturally vegetated.
Right.
They've done a great job of not overly manicuring their area, which is what we like to see. So I think a 1-to-1 would be sufficient here.
I'm just looking for ways to, as much as the mitigation would be useful, I think pulling this thing back 10 feet off that line, I think would be better to avoid some type of drainage issues or impacts to that 0 to 50. So, is there any possibility to do that? Is there any room to?
Unfortunately, it doesn't allow enough room for a car to back out and then have room to be able to turn. You need about a 25-foot turning radius. This is just barely about 22 feet in order to fit it in on the inside corner, in order to make the turn left to go back out the driveway in a forward direction.
Right. And you wouldn't gain a lot of distance from the 50-foot line.
Right.
No.
If you pulled it 10 feet, you'd
No.
gain a foot.
Right.
So, I guess if we can pack vegetation into that, what would be the vegetative buffer strip, if we
Yep.
can pack some bushes in there and,
Simple solution is to do what Yarmouth has done and make a zoning setback a special permit instead of a variance.
okay, for another night.
Yeah.
That's another board, another commission, but unfortunately, it's a variance in this town.
Right, it is.
And you should
They're
know that
not-
now, that that's what Yarmouth is. It's a special permit, it's not a variance.
They're hard to come by here too.
So do we want to see revised plans before we vote on it?
I mean, in this instance, I think the only thing we really need is something a little bit more specific about the plantings. So if you wanted to submit an amended plan for the next meeting, if we have a clear understanding of what we're looking for,
Plantings
you
in,
could vote and then
drain-
just say
drainage.
pending this. Let's not close the hearing or anything. We won't close the hearing, but I think what's needed is fairly minimal.
Shouldn't be a problem. I have a feeling tomorrow I'll be spending a lot of time in the office.
Yeah. Home office?
So plantings and the drainage plan, as to what's going to happen.
Just be a little bit clearer, you could put another note on the plan about what the drainage would be, yeah. Which is what we talked about, either talk about with your client here about whether infiltrators or the drip line is more
I would
appealable.
say a stone edging is a lot easier, and it at least would get us off of the water table instead of right on it.
Right,
The only trouble with that is, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that system would come out a little bit farther than this proposed diagram of the garage. And if we would prefer the plantings right in this area to keep the runoff from going into the wetlands, that type of a system will give us even less space.
You mean the gravel trench?
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty narrow. They're right up against.
But if you've got a 6 inches of roof overhang, and then that trench would be directly underneath the roof overhang.
Normally, it's about 2 feet wide.
2 feet wide.
It's about 6 inches deep, but it's right up against the building, and you're not really going to be able to plant anything there
It's like
Right.
dead
That's
space.
close
in
to
the way
the
of
building.
mitigation.
Yeah.
You're going to want it further away from the building just so you don't have,
And also just egress around the
Have-
building.
give it
You'll
room
be
to
out of the
spread.
50. It'll be out of the 50.
Yeah,
I know, but we'd like to see
I'd like to
Addition.
see
better than that,
plantings.
you know?
No, I know.
We'd like to see a vegetative buffer strip.
Most of the places you could.
Is that size of
That
garage
corner.
specific to something that you're planning, or are you just looking for a really big garage?
Well, the big garage, but I'm a woodworker, you know, as a hobby, and one of those bays is gonna be a shop.
Yep.
What is the normal size for a bay for a car?
12 by
Yeah, say 12 by,
12.
18.
yeah, 12 by
Okay,
18
and
or
this
20.
is 24, so,
It's a 2, yeah.
Nice size garage. Like you to build one in my yard too.
My house in Bill Ricker, we had a 24 by 36.
That's nice.
3 bays, but only one of them got used for a bay.
I have 4 garages at my house, and I can't get a car in any one of them.
Is there any reason why you have that half a foot on the setback? Is that, can you go right to the 20?
Usually, what happens is normally when you put a foundation in, when you go to frame it, the sheathing goes on the outside of it. Now you're encroaching, and then you're gonna put the corner boards on it, you're gonna encroach even more, and then you put the, whatever siding you're gonna do, you're gonna encroach even more. Oh, yeah, and then the eaves go out beyond that even more.
Are the eaves jurisdictional, or what's the jurisdictional point?
The good news is that
I
the
don't know.
zoning setback doesn't bother with the eaves because that's an architectural feature. However, the next surveyor comes in is gonna locate the corner boards. So that's the reason why we try and give it a half a foot, just in case the form guy coughs or sneezes.
well, you see what we're trying to come up with.
You're trying to get further away, and,
But we're trying to get space to plant in that little back, what's the northeast corner of the garage area.
Well, all the planting was gonna be in the 0, some of it, most of it in the 0 to 50, not just at that line.
that's why I wanted to be able to go toward the shed that's closer to the wetland.
Yeah.
To give us more area to put planting.
Yep.
Essentially, what you're trying to do is to dilute the possibility of going there. And the more trees that you put in that particular area, the less likelihood that somebody's gonna travel through it.
It's a little tough because our bylaws do allow us to ask for a vegetative buffer strip, and we often do ask for that. And we're just constrained here. I would love to find a way to get a 10-foot
Yeah.
buffer strip in this situation. The geometry doesn't seem to work very well for that.
I mean, if the commission would prefer, you can just continue, and then we could see a planting plan, which they're gonna do anyways. Rather than vote tonight.
Yeah.
What about
That's-
like a 3-foot wide planting berm, a raised berm, single plant, like a row? Or you might even have enough room for like a triangular spacing or something like that, just to,
Kinda right along the 50 area.
Right.
I suppose we could ask for a 5-foot vegetative buffer strip, and that's, it's a little bit slim, but that way it's in the plans. We've had a number of cases where the the product doesn't turn out the way the plans are, and all of a sudden we're worried about what to do with encroachment of structures. So maybe that's the way to condition it, to say, let's have a 5-foot vegetated buffer strip with these plantings, and so we can come back and check on that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, have them figure out how to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable having a motion to approve, and then, without closing the hearing, with the conditions of having more information on the drainage plan as well as the plantings.
And requiring a 5-foot buffer strip, vegetative buffer strip,
In addition to the 50-foot no disturb zone.
along the line of the 50-foot, no disturb.
50 to 55.
Yeah.
50 to 55.
Right.
Exactly, no, we can't. We can't go into it to put. Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah,
Sounds good.
is that doable, or do you want to think
That's
about your
doable.
geometry a little bit more?
That shouldn't be a problem. I can get a revised plan showing a planting area in that particular.
Yeah, by Wednesday of next week would be great.
Do you recommend that we go ahead and vote on this, or just wait for the new plan?
We're gonna have to see it anyway, I'm kind of thinking about it. We're gonna have to look at it again anyways, so I would just continue until
Okay.
January 17th.
I would see, if you can, authorize your staff to prepare the order of conditions.
Well, I was gonna
And
do
then
that in anticipation
We'll get the
of
plan
the
to
approval. Yeah.
Amy as soon as possible, then it should be just a quick
Mhm.
in and out, move out, if it's all done ahead of time.
Right.
Sounds
I
good.
will do that.
Yep, I expected it to go that way. Okay, I move that we continue the proposal for 68 Smith Street until January 17th. Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye, none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to be late.
Glad you showed.
Thank you, yes, I'll take them. Yeah. What?
I saw it somewhere, that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, I was like, did I tell him? Yes, I did.
I saw it somewhere.
Yeah.
We're moving along tonight.
Yep, keep going.
Gotta get out of
Ernie.
here.
Get home.
Close us down.
Huh?
Ernie.
Do you want to catch up with any orders, or just go right to discussion?
No, we have people here for the discussions, so I would just go right into it.
Okay, next we have a discussion on activities of Great Sand Lakes Association property off of Vacation Lane.
Good evening. I'm Dave Callahan, treasurer for the Great Sand Lakes Association, which owns the property, the beaches at Vacation Lane and John Joseph Pond. Let me start by apologizing for taking your valuable time, because this is something I wish had not happened. We at the Great Sand Lakes Association take very great pride in our ponds and protection of those ponds and the waters thereof. And we take it really seriously. And to tell you the truth, I'm embarrassed at the situation that occurred. I can give you a long description of what happened, or if you want to know all the dirty details, but in general, it was a miscommunication, several, or at least two miscommunications, one between myself and the president and the handyman who did the work. I had met with Amy on August 29th because we had several washouts on those storms that occurred over the summer. And the president and I had been working, trying to figure out what we could do to mitigate the problems, because it was carrying not only road runoff in, but it was also washing out the sand from the beaches, and concerned us a great deal. And Vacation Lane was one that got hit pretty bad. After meeting with Amy, we discussed the idea of using, of what had to be done via administrative review and what would have to be notice of intent. And she described, when we discussed the Vacation Lane property, she thought that we would be able to raise the wall on one end by 1 6x6, because it already was, the wall was already there.
There.
We'd just be extending it a bit. But she made it very clear that the other end that we wanted to extend out would require notice of intent. I thought I had communicated that fairly well to the president, but there were a lot of things we were communicating in there, because Amy had also given me a notice of, or a administrative approval to trim some purple loosestrife that was going to seed and bag it and take it off-site. And he interpreted that some way that we got an approval for the wall as well. He contacted the handyman, and they had already discussed, unbeknownst to me, that what the project might be, the two parts of the project, raising the wall and extending the wall. And apparently the handyman misinterpreted or decided to be a nice guy, and he said, well, I won't just raise the wall, I'll also do the other half of the project for them as well. And I only found out about it when I was balancing the checkbook and saw a check come through to the handyman that the president had written, and I was, what happened? Rushed over to see what had occurred. My heart sank, because Amy had been very clear what needed to be done. And so I talked to the president, found out what he thought, and we both agreed that the first thing to do was to contact Amy and turn ourselves in.
Fall on the sword.
So, I mean, we take conservation very, very seriously, and the protection of the ponds, and it was clearly just miscommunications. And now the question is, what do you want us to do? We're prepared to do what's necessary to right whatever we can.
Mr. Callahan and Mr. Robichaud, as the president of the association, have always been very, very good about asking for anything, down to, you know, removal of tiny little thing within jurisdiction. I appreciated you coming in and letting us know what happened. And I did go visit the site and see. And part of the wall is within the outer parts of the 0 to 50 foot no disturb zone. If you go down there and look at it, if you park at Vacation Lane, the road slopes down towards this association property. So all the road runoff kind of dumps onto the association property here. Over part of the property, there's a few pitch pines, and then there's a wooden retaining wall, and then there's a good 30 to 50 feet of beach area, I would say.
Very steep beach.
Pretty steep beach. So, road, down to the wall, and then to the beach. So I had said, you know, if you wanted to try to expand into the 0 to 50, it would be very difficult to do so. However, for the purposes of slowing down that water that's coming down before it gets to the beach and to the pond, it makes sense, because the water's just breaching it right now, which is why they went up a member of wood as well. So, and then they put stone behind there to try to catch the water and infiltrate the water before it went over. So that's something that I had allowed, was the placement of stone. This is one of those cases where I actually think they do need an after-the-fact filing for this, but I actually think what was done is probably improving in some way the water quality that's getting into the pond in that location, because it's slowing down. It's changed the grade in that corner. It's slowing down the runoff that's coming right from the road before it gets down. It's not a very big section. I mean, it's how wide is it? 6 inches by.
Well, it's a 6 by 6, and there's probably another maybe 8 inches behind it, which
Right.
is stone. And I'm trying to think of how long it was.
I'm
It was
trying to think
like
the length
it's
that's
8
in-
feet, I think, maybe 8 feet.
Yeah, it's not that. So 8 feet's not that long. So in this instance, yes, it had happened, and I have no doubt that it was an accidental oversight. But in this instance, I think it's certainly not hurting the resource area. If anything, it might be helping it. So I would recommend the after-the-fact RDA for it. You can approve a variance from the 50-foot no disturb with that, as well as maybe we can consider a little bit of mitigation planting.
No problem. We're always looking for other ways to stop the water that's coming down there.
Yeah.
because it's just-
So it's a town-maintained road, right?
Yep.
So can't we work on maybe putting a berm with a basin there? Remember we had
There's
the.
a basin at the base.
They did,
It's
excuse me.
a lot of maintenance,
they-
that one.
After the meeting we had and the storms and so forth, I don't know whether you had influence in contacting Link, but we contacted Link, and neighbors around there contacted Link. And they had built probably, I think this must have been in the 90s, they had put a rock swale down at the lowest part of the hill, right where Vacation Lane comes in from Queen Anne. When I went over to see the work that had been done on this wall, I was surprised to find out that Link had gone in there and dug that whole catch basin, or the riprap out, and built a very nice catch basin in there. Not like a sealed one underneath, but just a nice depression in the ground with a split rail fence around it. I thought that was a great job, and I don't know how much influence Amy had on that.
Not much
But
that way.
they've done that. They also did some work in terms of cleaning on the other side of the beach. They cleaned out a little bit of swale area that had filled up, which does pick up some of the water that goes down there. The water that seems to be coming down over the wall or to the wall, for the most part, now that this other swale is cleaned out, seems to be from basically underneath the trees. It's not coming so much off the road at
Yeah.
that point. It's the two ends where the
It's
runoff.
coming from like Brown's side down?
Pardon?
It's coming from like Jack Brown's? side of the
Jack
road?
Brown's side,
Yeah,
and that was one of the worst of the runoffs.
Right.
Came down, and there was a grassy swale that had been built many years ago. That was coming down at the end of the wall that we had built several years ago, and then running down the beach. By extending the wall, our plan was to try to keep the water over onto the grassy
right,
side of it, to keep it go down and filter over there.
right.
And the town did clean that out, the top part of that out a little bit. And now we'll take the responsibility to keep that clean. I personally clean the swale that they do at what we call Association Beach on Clearwater Drive,
Right,
because that gets filled up with stuff. That's the problem with those rock swales and so forth, is
they get
if
clogged.
you don't maintain them, they
Right.
get clogged and everything just runs down.
Yeah, it's much worse on the other side of the pond too. I've looked at that before. We actually talked about this not too long ago. The town taking ownership of making sure that those basins were cleaned out. Because I think it was washing into the parking lot, which was in turn washing the gravel onto the beach and,
Oh, Bucks Pond Road,
yeah.
yes.
That's a
Well,
mess over there.
I now actually measure that catch basin about 3 times a year to figure out how fast the thing fills up, and I assure you, they will get called. I called them the last time because it was full. I mean, it was just nothing, it was just running straight down.
Right.
Last year when they had the problem.
Right.
But now I'm actually doing periodic testing to see how fast it's filling up so that I can call highway before it gets to that type of crisis. There's other things I'd like to see them do with that beach. That's not our problem per se, but we care about the ponds.
Right.
The washout that's occurring in the town beach is just, it
Well, I
bothers
think
me.
property owners have the right to not have town water overtake their property. So I think it was more of a town responsibility thing than it was you having to manage it. I think that's what,
In my book,
down
it is
to-
a town responsibility down there, but it,
yeah.
you know, you sometimes push and sometimes you get action, sometimes you don't. So that's where I use Amy a lot for that, because I figure she's got a way
She'll
to
drop
twist.
the hammer.
And
right.
Conservation has a lot more push
Yeah,
on,
it's
push on
real-
it than I do.
Real tough.
So it looks like an after-the-fact RDA is appropriate.
Yeah, I don't think we need a notice of intent. It's a small enough structure, and I actually think it's certainly not hurting anything. If anything, it's helping. So, if you're amenable to that, that would be my recommendation for it.
How about a little more detail to the planting, the mitigation planting?
Yes, Dave and I'll work with Dave on that.
Yeah, we've discussed using harmony grass up on the top of the hill as a possibility.
I think you're gonna need some more,
It's gonna
loam,
need something to, yeah, it's
because
pretty hard.
it's just
It's
hard
hard painted
packed.
up there
You're
right now.
it's real hard packed there.
That was part of one of the many projects that Amy and I had discussed in our meeting in August.
So we don't need to vote, we just, we're in
Nope,
agreement that this is a good
this is kind of
approach?
a show cause, if you will, to give him direction, or the
Mhm.
Great Sand Lakes Association direction.
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yay, so if you want to, I know you're taking off, when are you taking off, Dave? When you take off?
February.
Okay, so maybe sometime, maybe Tuesday, because that's the only day I have next week.
Okay, do you need help on Monday?
I'll be in touch, I do need some help later in the week.
Okay. I don't see the proponent from South Street here yet.
We can move on, I think
We're
Mr.
quite a bit-
Kelleher is here.
Yeah, we're quite a bit ahead of schedule, so.
We're gonna do the kelp proposal, Jamie? Thank you. How are you?
Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. My name is Mark Kelleher, Gordon Ritchie Road, West Harwich. I'm here to talk to you tonight about a pilot, a very small-scale kelp proposal. And this is by no means if I get your approval, I still have to deal with the Harbor Master, the Division of Marine Fisheries, and the Army Corps of Engineers. And I've been told to start here.
And a formal application with us.
Okay, and I wasn't aware of that, but okay,
This is
that's it.
just,
Just a little informative.
Did you want a pointer?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
If I know how to use it.
There's that orange button, and you can point to the screen.
Oh, okay, great. So what I'm proposing, and it's just tentative, is 2 locations off of Harwich. The first location is about a quarter of a mile off of Herring River. And the reason that is located there, for a kelp array, you need a minimum of 20 feet depth. And the second array, and I'll explain what an array is, would be about a mile and a half out at the KP buoy. And that's so, I get data to see where the yield is, see if I pick up any of the nutrients from the Herring River to improve yield, and also whether out at the KP buoy, we're a little bit farther out in the ocean, that we get, good flow and nutrients. So those are the 2 locations I'm proposing. Just a little bit of history about kelp growing. I was just down Connecticut talking to some people. There are in the tens of farmers growing it right now. It has a guaranteed market for both fresh food and industrial pharmaceutical uses. I've been told that there's a guaranteed price of $1 per pound for whatever you land. So there is potential there. So it is ongoing in Connecticut. There is a large project that was put in the ground this year at Horseshoe Shoal in Nantucket Sound. That's in a conjunction with the Woods Hole Oceanographic. It's quite a large project. There is somebody in Chatham doing it now as well. So there is some history to it, to the kelp proposal. Can you go to the next slide, if you wouldn't mind? Well, that's that's the kind of a blow-up of the area right off of Herring River. That's as you can see, that's where it just starts to get deep enough where you could do it. If you could go to the next slide. Now, here's just a typical array. And what I'd propose for these is to have 2 250-foot lines. These are basically white mooring buoys, like you may see in the harbor. These are concrete anchor buoys, 2 of them, 250 to 350 pounds concrete. These buoys here are basically flotation buoys to keep the kelp line from sinking too far. If you don't have those buoys there, the kelp, which can grow from 10 to 12 feet down, will scrape bottom and ruin the quality of it. So that's basically what I'm looking at in terms of a setup. And this is what they're using. This is not my design. This is what Green Wave is using. That's an organization that's pushing the kelp down in Connecticut. It's also very similar to what they're using up in Maine, so I don't think there's anything real new about that. How the operation works, and this is why I thought it would be of value to Harwich. It's basically in the non-heavy use type time of the year. You set out the lines in October or November. They're basically microscopic pieces of kelp, so to speak, on a line. They at least establish themselves before the winter comes. They basically are dormant over the course of the winter. And they get their full growth in the spring. And harvest time is from May to June 15th. So I wouldn't anticipate that the kelp lines would not be in the water after June 15th, because after that you get degradation and other things go on that. So, so that's my basic idea. The timeline would be, I'd like to try and get approval so that I could do this next fall, in 2018, 2019. And again, I think it's valuable because there is some economic potential there, and it's really, it shouldn't cause too much interference with recreational boaters or even fishermen, because it's in a time of year where it's not, it's, right offshore here, there's not a lot of traffic or use. So, anyways, that's all I have to say. If you have any questions, as best as I can. I've not done this before. It's an idea, but I could answer them to the best of my ability, so.
Sorry if there was a miscommunication about how today was going to go. Thought it would just be useful to kind of get some feedback before we had you do a formal application to see if this is something that the commission is interested in pursuing with you. So first of all, very, very interesting project, and I like, you went through the time of year issues, which is a big thing for us because of the boating season and the locations. So you did say you wanted two 250-foot lines. So when you're talking that, you're really only talking
Yes, that's an outline for a whole 2.5-acre plot. Two of those,
so
yes.
very small area.
Yes.
So something that we would need is, at time of application, that the harbor master will need to, and I encourage, you can reach out to him now at any point in time.
Right.
To run this by him, because he's gonna be critical in this if it goes forward for navigational purposes. You'll need exact kind of coordinates.
Okay.
For where this is gonna go. You'll need that for the Army Corps, you'll need that for Chapter 91. For us, you're gonna need exact coordinates. And then like kind of a buffer area a little bit around that, I would assume that somehow you're gonna need something like that. But a really interesting concept, and I'll leave it open for anybody else.
Any comments, commissioners?
I have a lot of questions. I just need to put them in my mind properly.
No problem.
You said that there is financial benefit. Would the town benefit?
I haven't thought about that. I'd have to really check and see if, I do know that when, down in Connecticut, when there are grants, there is some fee involved.
Yeah, it would be similar to like a shellfish grant that we have on the Cape.
Right, right.
There would be a grant or a lease.
Lease, that's what I
If you
was
will.
wondering, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Be something that the selectmen and that we would have to consider.
Right.
We can come back to, Paul. There's plenty of questions, I'm sure.
Yeah, I do.
What will be really helpful is to know some of the names of the towns in Connecticut that are doing this.
I could do that, and
Get 'em to
I
me.
could give you the name of the organization
great.
that is kind of spearheading the whole.
Yeah, I'd like
Good
to
part of
see
the
how
effort.
other towns handled it.
Yeah.
so.
This Green Wave is,
It's a nonprofit organization. Of course, there's a lot of nonprofits these days, and they seem to have a fair amount of foundation money behind them, because they're offering technical expertise. For example, I went down there, they offered a full day of school. At least in Connecticut and Rhode Island, they're offering advice on the permitting. They were actually spearheaded an effort with the Connecticut legislature to get a whole legal framework for this, so that they put it in a terms of economic development and jobs. So Green Wave is one. There's another company called Ocean Approved in Maine that has quite an operation up in Maine, and they help quite a bit because the product is actually sold to them. They have a processing plant to do that. So those seem to be, in my research, the two major players. I think there's some people that, for example, and I think the fellow down in Chatham may be just trying to serve the fresh market. So I don't know how extensive their processing may be.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Carolyn, any questions?
Looking at this chart,
Which is not what I'm proposing, but yes, that's a full 2.5 acre plot.
okay.
And I would only have two of those.
Two, would,
Be a
what,
pilot
Two of the
project.
top, the top,
just two lines?
yeah, and I don't,
Lines of 10 buoys?
yeah, does that say 250 feet or 500 feet?
It says
It's the 250.
500.
Oh,
Five.
On the
Okay,
wrong
so
one?
that's,
Yeah, this one says 250.
yeah, that's the that's the 250 that I would use, two of those. That is something, if you had a full-grown grant, which I'm not looking for right now, what you have in your left hand.
On the,
Yes, that's, what I'm proposing is to do that, two of
so
them.
you would have two lines of how many black buoys?
1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, that's a 250-foot line.
And the
So
two
you'd have
ends.
your two end buoys and the four in between buoys.
6.
And I'd like to do two of those at each location. Only for, just in case a boat hit it, like
Are
rough
they gonna be
seas.
lit at night?
No, they wouldn't be lit at night. I know the ones in, they could be, if that was an issue, like the harbor master says he wanted it lit, but, I mean, you have buoys out there
Mhm.
that are not lit, that lobstermen have, and they would be white and reflective, but I haven't seen lit buoys.
And are these buoys big enough to show up on radar?
I don't believe they, quite honestly, I don't think they're big enough. Although you do have corner buoys that are tall and cylindrical. So that sets off at least the farms I've seen in Connecticut, that sets off the perimeter of them. I don't know if that would be visible by radar.
I suppose this would be waterways,
Yeah,
Yeah.
John
Purview.
and Matt
But-
Hard and the
but
committee there.
it seems to me, coming in, unfortunately, we have a fair amount of boating traffic in heavy fog, that whatever it is, has to be able to be picked up on radar.
Yeah, I'd have to see what they've done in the other locations. I mean, I try to put these in places that were not on the regular travel routes. I mean,
But one is a quarter of a mile off Herring River.
There are
and-
fishermen that,
And Kill Pond is a popular
oh,
boating,
where the reef is.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I understand that. That's why I'll talk to John. I'll try and get a place that is as much as possible off any travel routes.
The seasonality is favorable to boating concerns,
yeah.
except for the May period. There's
May is
there's
pretty-
fishing activity.
There are year-round fishermen that go. Would it be detrimental to them coming in at night, say?
I think the 16 might come up on a radar.
You think it
The
would?
the 12, I kind of doubt it, but 16 might,
So the two ends,
maybe.
The two ends and the,
If it was much bigger than 16, I think it would.
We had a
Something that
couple
we
of
can-
days this summer that we had a dense fog.
oh, yeah.
Well, that isn't really part of our jurisdiction. I think
No.
it's interesting to ask.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what would be jurisdictional here for us? It's in the resource area. I see impacts as temporary. The gear is in and out. So I guess that's our purview, is to look
Yeah.
at those questions.
Right, I mean, as far as what's gonna really anchor them, that would be jurisdictional. Navigation, technically, the Waterways Committee is an advisory committee to this board.
All right.
They don't make the decisions, so they would advise us, so it's gonna have to,
Navigation would be our concern.
Yeah.
It is under the care and custody
Advisory
of
council.
conservation,
Wow, I didn't know that.
with
They don't know
input from, I mean, if you look at the water-dependent structures bylaw, or, part of the town code, it's conservation.
Oh, wow. I think I
I-
would have known that.
I do have a you know how the moorings in the rivers that the boats are on during the season come out
Right.
in the winter? Would these come out in the summer?
Oh, yeah.
They
Th-
would.
This would be cleared. I mean, all the lines now, the two anchors, what you could probably do is remove them and put some type of marker down
Marker.
below level, so
Right.
it wouldn't be a navigable
Right.
Okay.
hazard. I think that would be a good idea. First of all, they could get wrecked
Right.
if you had them out there.
Yeah. Okay.
And now for our resource area in the cranberry bogs, the town gets a lease.
Mm-hmm.
Are you leasing this area from the town? Or are you
It is town waters,
it is town water, it's a quarter of a mile off, and then Kill
anything within
Pond.
3 miles.
How far out is Kill Pond Buoy? Is that
I
still
don't have-
within
it is.
town?
It's within 3.
It is within the 3.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, the land would be state jurisdiction, and so you would need all those permits.
Yeah. But it would be something, like, we're also starting to consider, we've had somebody approach us in terms of shellfish grants in town as well. So it would be a similar type of agreement that would have to be made.
I think it's fascinating.
I do
In
too,
terms of
it certainly
feasibility,
is.
have you looked at your turbidity that's expected in this region and thought about photosynthesis? Are these plants going to grow at depth with the conditions that are going to be found here? It's very turbid in this area. Is that something you've looked at or considered?
Well, I think a good barometer of that would be what they're doing at Horseshoe Shoals right now,
Chatham.
in Chatham too. So,
We're in Chatham.
one of them is off of Harding's Beach, and the other one is
Similar to.
where, out, and I'm not really sure, out in the area of North Beach.
Right.
But I think that it's not in the ocean, it's on the bayside, but I'm not sure. I know he had 2 locations. I know one was off Harding's.
The Hardings would be similar.
Right.
Horseshoe and the other location would be much clearer water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's not really our concern, but I'd like to see become successful, but that's something you probably have to look at. Will this stuff grow?
Well, that's why,
The
I mean,
turbidity that you
right, I
find
don't
there.
want to do a lot of extensive expenses and stuff until I get get a sense of what the yield is gonna be and if it's gonna be successful. That's why this is a relatively limited pilot project.
Mm-hmm.
Location-wise, I would say that if you were to go any further west, you would get into spring fishing for sea bass, fluke, bluefish, striped bass. As you get close to Kill Pond Bar, you might have some encounters with people trolling, drifting, that might be unfavorable. But that would not occur till mid-May on. And then certainly by October through April, there'd be none of that.
Right.
So
Right.
I think as long as you don't go much closer to the west, you might be all right with that, pending feedback from the harbor master. We had a discussion earlier, didn't we? Is this a different proposal or a different group? Remember that?
For kelp?
Yeah, we had a kelp discussion 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah, they didn't follow through.
Okay.
The one they wanted to put it under the fish house or something like
Yeah,
that, or?
they don't have the depth there anyways, but
Right.
yes, that was the idea, but it didn't get followed through.
So, I know that a lot of plants, or a lot of sea creatures like to live amongst kelp, but is there something that eats kelp?
Well, from what I
Sea
understand,
urchins or-
there are things, and that's why it really needs to be pulled out. But by the time the water temperature hits 65, you run into problems where you get degradation, whether it's sea animals or whatever, so,
Oh, seals.
and I don't even know about seals.
I don't think they're vegetarian.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But your yield decreases once the water gets above 65 degrees. So,
Okay.
that's why it would be out by May or early June by the latest.
And also with all the codium that starts popping up in the summer, as the water gets warmer and starts floating in, your lines would get all fouled up with
Right.
that stuff, so. So our next, I mean, if the commission wants to see more, I mean, it's your right to go look more into this. I'd recommend that you would talk to the harbor master about the proposal. And I'd be happy, like, if you wanted to set up a meeting with him, myself, and you,
Okay.
to kind of vet this a little bit more.
Just to clarify, is it our bylaws or the Wetlands Protection Act that links us to navigation?
Bylaw.
Bylaw. And so,
So it says, yes, so if you look under the town code, which is the bylaw, there's the wetlands protection section, and then there's water dependent structures. And we take, I mean, that's why we have people go to waterways, because they're the people who are out on the water, or the waterways committee, and John. So we take a lot of, when people look for docks and stuff, take what they have to say. They're the experts with this. But they don't have regulatory ability. We do, so.
so we would rule on navigational concerns?
Based on what we're hearing from the harbor master and the waterways committee.
I stand corrected, Carolyn.
So,
That's the primary issue I see, because I can't think of resource area impacts would be
It's
anything more than
positive.
temporary, yeah.
Yeah, temporary and positive, if
Yeah.
anything.
Very interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mark. Could we skip over, I think Stephanie and Catherine, you guys are here for certs of compliances and orders of conditions. Could we skip to those, because it'll probably be very quick?
Sure.
Catherine, I think the certs will go real quick. So for fiddlers, right? Okay. So can we skip to the request for certificate of compliance for 9 Fiddler's Landing?
Mm-hmm.
Can if you want. Pretty straightforward. The assistant conservation agent went and did this review. Catherine Ricks from Coastal Engineering is here, so if there's any questions. But for 9 Fiddler's Landing, this is a real estate transfer, I believe. Both of these orders are for the dock, the original dock, and then the reconfiguration. There's a subsequent order of conditions for changes that has already received a certificate of compliance. So these are older that never went through the process of getting their certificates of compliance. So what is currently out there now is in compliance. These are old and defunct. So, okay. So I would recommend certificates of compliance for both Albert Firm filings for 9 Fiddler's Landing. It's really just to clean up the record.
Yep. Amy, when was the reconfiguration, when was that approved?
That I don't know. This one, the first one was back in, sorry, give me a second here. It's the wrong one. Hang on. Back in 1998 was the first of both of them. These were in 1998.
Yep.
I don't know when the more subsequent one is.
But it's as planned?
That's what my Nikki came up with, is that what is the current configuration has a certificate of compliance.
Any questions from the commissioners? No? I move that we approve the certificate of compliance for 9 Fiddler's Landing for both SC 32-1315 and SC 32-1304.
A second.
I would just add that we condition that winter storage has to be up off the marsh.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I'll second.
Second, all those in
No.
favor? Aye. None opposed, motion carries for both.
Please sign those two. And if we can transition over to, so Catherine, you wanted these tonight, didn't?
Yeah, if I can, because they wanna.
Yes.
do the closing.
I will take them, and make copies. If you folks could maybe do the orders of conditions, which
Was
I
there-
emailed you for
was there-
22 Walker Woods.
How about Uncle Vinnie's? Is that cert?
They're just not here.
Okay.
So I was trying to get Stephanie and Catherine out because they're quick tonight. But I can come back.
Do we have them?
They were emailed to you.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I can go print those off too. They submitted revised plans, detailing the additional information the commission wanted.
I think we were looking for an additional 600 and something square feet of, 614
Yeah.
square
Do you want?
mitigation for, as 2-to-1 mitigation for the chicken yard.
Yes. What I will do, Stephanie, you may want to sit up here, but I will I need these back, folks, but while I'm making the copies for Catherine, here are 3 revised plans for 22 Walker Road.
So you're hopefully looking at a plan, the landscape plan dated December 11th, 2017 was the last modified. So after the initial meeting, there was a plan presented with proposed restoration plantings. And the discussion was, going beyond just restoring what had been cleared and doing some additional plantings as mitigation for the new chicken enclosure.
Yeah.
And that enclosure is 307 square feet, so you asked for 2-to-1 mitigation for that. So this revised plan, December 11th, has that additional 614 square feet in two separate areas. One, which is downslope of the chicken area, is 170 square feet, and then another area is an additional 445 square feet. One other change that was made, the original plan here showed a proposed patio outside the walkout basement door. So that proposed patio was removed, and instead they're just showing some kind of random stones being set in there with, grass around it, just to provide some sort of clean entrance to the basement.
There is a walk-in there,
Yes.
if I remember.
Yep.
So we approved this plan last meeting.
You did not approve this plan last
Okay.
meeting. There was the original version of that, and you requested additional square footage of mitigation planting. So that's what's reflected in this December 11th plan, is the bigger area of plantings.
Guess we need to see the order. else review the orders?
No.
They were emailed to us, I think,
Today?
This afternoon.
Yeah,
Oh, they were?
yeah,
She said she was gonna print them.
yeah.
I didn't see them.
Are you representing any of the other orders that we're looking at, or just this one?
Just this one. You can go on to another one if you don't want to wait.
Well, I think
mean-
we're gonna take 116 South Street next, but that might take a few minutes, so let's just give Amy a chance to
Okay.
come in. If it is just the one order, we might as well get through it. I wasn't sure if we're trying to do all three orders that are listed.
President Gravy Lilac. Nice.
I'm sorry.
Nice plant list.
It's fine though?
They're
So
over
what are you
here
looking at?
somewhere. The President's Gravy Lilacs.
Oh,
Those are sweet.
Are they
What do
a
they look
localized?
They're similar to like Miss Kim. Not quite as
need another
fragrant
hint.
as like a common lilac, but
Yeah.
sweet.
do they come in different colors?
So we approved this one
More like
without closing the
they end
hearing,
up
is that
like
how this went?
lavendery though, you know, but
Pending, yes.
Pending
sweet.
the plan.
So you would vote to approve and close.
Yep.
Sorry.
Did you make copies?
Oh, of the draft orders?
Right.
No, I didn't. Didn't think I needed to. It was
No.
basically it was the same, I can real quick if you want me to go do
Well,
that.
no one's reviewed them.
I didn't look at my emails when I got home.
Right, so, do you have a copy you can pass around?
Go real quick.
I think we should review the order.
I have a copy on my phone.
Oh, I haven't tried to look at that. Draft orders.
Need some like Jeopardy music while this is going on, right?
I saw it before, but I don't see it now. It came in this afternoon.
Start bringing my 6-year-old, she can play her flutophone for everybody.
She learned hot cross buns yet?
Ugh,
I had two, so
tough,
it's the standard.
it's tough.
Want to think that's it.
We've got 3 documents here.
Was it the first one?
Susan Pratt, Walter Wood.
Yeah, you got it right here.
Okay.
Yep. It's just two special conditions that we both discussed. To authorize the chicken coop,
Mm-hmm.
the fenced-in area behind the house.
Right.
In the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone is now permitted, and that it also highlights the planting plan for 614 square feet of mitigation planting.
For the chicken coop, right?
Yes, to compensate for the chicken coop, which wasn't initially permitted, so I have no comments on those 2 conditions. I think that's fine.
No comment.
Did you see, were you able to see it?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Just looking for it, I got like 20 emails from Amy in the last couple of days. So,
You want to see it here?
what was
It
was
came
sent
in
today?
about 9 hours.
It was sent out today.
Here it is.
Okay, thank you.
Which 9 hours ago sounds like ages and ages ago.
I know.
Someday we'll have tablets in front of us that have this information just ready to go.
We'll work on that.
Yep, we'll get there.
You can Skype from home and
Right.
You'd actually be able to get some people to be on the commission with us too. Do that.
What's a Stewart's?
you'll have to double your salary then.
Stewardia?
Yeah, let's do that.
What is that?
We'll find out what that might be. The more I talk to other commissions of different towns, the less I want to know. There's
Alaskans
quite a
are-
few that are compensated.
We
Oh,
got
really?
them though.
Yeah.
Amy,
Oh, I
we
didn't think
got 'em.
anywhere.
Huh?
Yeah, quite a
Found 'em.
Boston area in
Found
particular.
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah.
just
Under
can't get
condition.
volunteers.
Oh, did you? Oh, no worries. Well, here's some more, and I found some for the other projects too.
Thanks.
Oh, good, okay.
Thank you.
You know,
All right.
sorry they weren't in there.
We're primed for the,
All going.
this one anyways, just two,
Okay, we're good for
two
this.
special conditions.
Yep, so Hutton, so this is for the, this is another one. Another one. Another one. Why Damon, I don't print out that. And this is Damon. I printed mine out.
Did we talk about giving you like a temporary sprinkler system here? Or some kind of
Do you need these plans, everyone?
I
No.
don't
fording of
remember.
waters?
You talking back?
I don't know if that was in, that's not in the plan at all.
I would imagine that bakes during the summer, right?
I mean, do you have a typical condition, no permanent
Above,
underground?
above ground, 3 years,
Yeah, we say no permanent
automatic timer.
irrigation. We have a standard condition we can do for irrigation.
Is that in here?
I don't see it.
Did I not put it?
No, I don't see it.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't put it, sorry, I have to add that. I'll do the
We'll hook you up a little water. Be nice, right?
temporary above ground irrigation.
Is there any new lawn? In the plan?
No.
I think there was a net decrease in lawn, right?
A decrease in lawn, but
After the plantings,
Yeah.
but not,
was there?
some more outside of our jurisdiction, right?
Well, only eliminating the lawn where the chicken and things.
Chicken coop, yes. Hence the mitigation.
But otherwise, it was just, they had cleared beyond the
Yeah,
previous lawns.
Right.
alright, so temporary above ground irrigation, no fertilizers.
They had done a lot of clearing.
What about a one-shot organic, one-time deal?
Fine with me if that's what you guys are okay with for the shrubs.
444 bolster or something mellow to give them a little, get some root action going.
I'm not feeling that, but if you want it, it's okay.
Just want them to survive.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. If, so one additional special order?
Temporary above ground drip
Temporary above ground.
irrigation, for 3 growing seasons?
Sure.
Is there a permanent irrigation system in the grass already?
I don't know. It seemed awfully,
Lush.
yes.
But it wouldn't extend into the mitigation planting area, so they would need something else.
You might just be able to do a separate zone on your controller. Yeah, that just does that wetlands area. And then you just turn it off and be done with it after it's established.
It would be above ground though?
Mhm.
Okay.
Alright, I can fix that language up.
Yeah, that's easy, easy peasy.
Any further comments on the order of conditions?
Great plan.
We have a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the orders of conditions for 22 Walker Woods Drive.
Second?
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor, say aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
Carolyn, can I have that plan back, please? And folks, I'll need you to sign this. Stephanie will either have them out Friday or Monday.
Okay. I don't think anything is happening too soon. Enjoy your day off tomorrow.
Thanks.
Thanks.
hopefully you guys have one as well. What do you
I
need?
have one straggler.
Oh, straggler, thank you.
All right.
Now, you want sucker working tomorrow?
All right, please sign.
You're plowing, right?
Yeah, you can always ride shotgun if you want, for
Okay.
the graveyard shift with me. I think we're gonna get rain.
I lose my electricity, I might want to do that
Oh.
with the heater.
Just go in order. Now it would be 116 South Street,
Yep.
the bog lease, and then 4th Street.
Sure. Next, we have discussion on 116 South Street activity. I'm going to excuse myself from this discussion, as I know the property owner, so if the vice chair could take over from here, appreciate it.
With the jungle.
We actually, we don't have a quorum to make any decision on this.
Okay.
So we can have the
Wanna get in the hot seat
discussion,
here?
of course. Just so you know, I mean, we don't have, so we can discuss it, but we're gonna have to continue because we don't have, we have to have 4 voting members and Brad can't.
Right,
So, let's have an open discussion about what happened and go from there.
sure. Shall I start?
Sure, please.
Hi, I'm Ken Weeks. I am the property owner. Lifelong, full-time commercial lobster fisherman. And I secured, or the builder secured a permit to put a shed on my property, which we did. And I needed some access down into the shed, so we made a small road, which I thought was okay. I thought we were within the area that was permissible to do so. The other issue is, you know, I would like to be able to keep my lobster traps there. I've had a spot that I've kept them for 17 or 18 years since I've lived here. Due to some family illness, the property's for sale, so I can no longer keep them there. I have searched high and low for a place to keep my gear. We came before the town, I think, a group of us 4 or 5 years ago, to no avail. We tried to find a spot where all of us could store fishing gear. These are traps, untreated. I don't see where anything on the trap poses any kind of an issue to the environment, to water. I mean, I wouldn't put them in the water to catch food if I thought so. You know, to be honest with you, when we were younger, my grandfather and my father would plant the garden where I had the traps. Traps are there for about 4 months before I can go back in the water. It used to be less time, but because of federal regulations with whales now, our season's been shortened by a few months. Had really no issues with any of my, you know, I did ask a couple of my neighbors if they were okay with it. They said sure. You know, I just, the area that they're in, they're placed above ground a few inches. It is wet in times, but I think the majority of that problem arises from the fact that the water drains down South Street. There's a catch basin on the other side of Gilbert and South it's pitched so that the catch basin gets no water, I get all the water. And it's, you know, I've actually helped the town a couple of times, you know, open it up so that there wasn't a 3-foot puddle in the road there. You know, I want to work with you guys as best I can. I'm, you know, willing to do what it takes to make this work if we can. I was a little surprised by the fine. You know, I would like to see that rescinded. Like I said, I've searched everywhere to find a place in this town, but I can't afford to spend $120,000, $130,000 on a little piece of land to keep my traps there for 4 months.
How many traps are we talking about?
800.
So what size space do you need for 800
That's,
traps?
you know, I thought about that when I came over. I don't have the exact square footage. I mean, it can vary, you know, because I didn't and won't take any trees down there. So I've had to carefully stack them in there. I mean, if you could.
Quarter of an acre, maybe?
Not even. Not even. It's a small area behind there. I know we're working in a tight spot there. I understand that, you know, and I feel bad that there was probably a lack of communication on my part and misunderstanding on my part, you know, that where I was. But I honestly did not think that that was going to be an issue as far as traps being a problem to any type of,
environmentally sensitive area. I certainly wasn't trying to pull anything over. Yellow traps don't just disappear out of sight, so. Other than that, like I said, I'd be willing to listen to any offers you folks have to make this thing work. Even if it was just for this year where I can, keep searching for a place to keep my gear. It's just, it's a hard thing to find, and I'm not the only one running into this problem, I know. Like I said, I just am wondering how this can be any type of an issue to the environment, I think there's a lot more damage coming from, the washout on the road, coming down the road into my backyard than there is from my traps. Like I said, we used to plant the garden under where the traps always were kept, so to me, it does nothing but nourish the soil in that area, and it's, most of the gear is out of there. Well, we're allowed to start setting our gear now, but May 1st. We actually just finished today, so it was a long, cold day on the water. But that's my sad story, and I'm sticking to it, I guess, so.
What is the story on the road?
My yard slopes down in the back. Amy and Brad came out and saw it.
We were there today, too.
Okay, and it was the only way I could have access to that shed to be able to bring my truck down there and still stay out off the edge of what I think is that critical area there. I realize that some of the gravel had gone down to a sensitive area. I mean, I'm willing to try to scrape that back as best I can, but there's no equipment down there. There's no, the only activity is picking the traps up physically by hand and taking them out of there.
So you asked for permission to build the shed, but not permission to put in a road to access the shed?
I thought because that was on my property without being, subjected to a wetland area, I thought that was fine. I mean, the person that built the frame, maybe I took some bad advice from a few people, but I just didn't think I was, in violation or, of any issue there or any law. I mean, it's, we had physically walked off the area to where the wetland was, and my understanding, and I was wrong, was that no construction could take place there. I just didn't think that, putting a trap, some traps here was gonna be an issue. There's no.
I'm still talking about the road, so.
Right, but
100 feet, not 50, 100 feet buffer zone.
Okay.
Pretty much your whole property is jurisdictional. When the house was built, all of that.
I've procured the services of Terry Warner to do a new plan, and then
That'd be
Paul
great.
Shea
Yep.
to do a wetland delineation,
Yes,
as
as
you
we
had
talked
mentioned, so.
about. I think that's what we need to start with.
Okay.
Because the old plan and what came to me was a request for an 8x10 shed on sonotubes. So that was administrative, based on an old site plan showing, and the wetland lines should not have changed very much there because it's an old ditch. So, but it's not a valid plan so much anymore. But as an 8x10 shed, I said, well, that's okay for administrative purposes if it's outside the 50-foot. Did not know about the road. Definitely would have triggered a much higher level of application. And it's the 50-foot no disturb zone is not just for no adverse impact to the wetland. The 50 feet from a wetland is critical for the protection of that wetland, and that should naturally be vegetated. Because it hadn't been in the past, it's not something that we're probably gonna, but it's supposed to be a vegetated buffer to a resource area. So it allows no new structures, no activity, actually. Our bylaw reads no activity.
So I shouldn't even walk back in my own backyard?
No, you can walk in your own backyard, but it is also your responsibility as a property owner to understand the regulations that go on your property. And I went out on a site visit with the property owner, and I thought I remembered yourself being there, honestly, coming in after the fact when I was talking with David about the shed.
No, I was not. I know you said there was a car there, but that was my daughter's car that,
Well,
she
there were
was in
two men
California.
that I talked to on that site.
And who is David?
The builder.
Oh, actually, the first time I met you was the other day, so it wasn't me.
But no, there's a deck on that now too. There's First thing we need is a new site plan
Okay.
and with a new wetland delineation. And it'd be up to the commission to decide about the storage. I mean, it's not 10 traps, it's 800. Right up to the edge of the wetland. So it's not so much what the traps are giving off, it's that that area is supposed to be a natural area.
Do you have other areas on your property that you could put those traps? Your front yard?
No, couldn't do it there.
Why?
I think the neighbors wouldn't be too happy about seeing, I'm right on South Street,
Yeah, we were there.
so I don't think that would work. I know we had another site for the shed that we had talked about, and that was
Right.
just a tad too close to the road, I guess, so we decided, we
It
opted
was too
for-
close to the wetland, not the road.
That was too close to the wetland also?
Yep,
Okay.
the wetland actually comes in that area.
Just curious, did you try talking to the town to see if the town had any parcels that they would lease you for temporary storage?
We've done it a couple times, yeah. I know some of the guys down there and talked to Chris Nickerson and those guys, and I haven't had any luck with any place for us to keep our gear.
What do you think about that approach, Amy, as far as, does the town have a spot?
You could talk with the harbor master.
Okay, like I said, a bunch of us came here
Yeah.
probably 3-4 years ago, and, there just wasn't enough space for the guys to keep their stuff, so.
No. I would reach out to John, and for the time being, the traps aren't right now doing it's winter, there's no vegetation growing anyways, and you're not leaching anything. So I think we need to get that site plan, so thank you
Sure.
for being proactive
Yep.
in contacting Terry and Paul Shea, that's a good first step. And once we kind of see where things lay, then we can kind of direct you as to what is gonna be needed.
Okay. All right.
That's my opinion.
Well, that's fair, it works for me. All right.
So, did Paul give you a timeline?
I
Or,
basically told him.
Terry?
Well, yeah, either one is ready to go. I mean, I said, let me go to
Okay.
the meeting and find out
Okay.
exactly what they want, and then I told them I would get back to them, so sounds like I'll be around tomorrow with the weather we're getting, so I will get in contact with them and get them on that as soon as we can.
That'll be great. What I'll probably do, because we'll put this, and the commission, I issued the fines because if we don't act within a certain amount of time, we lose the ability to. The commission has the right to keep or rescind them.
Okay.
So, I would say with their permission at this point in time, we'll hold off temporarily
All right.
on the payment of that.
Appreciate that.
Yep. And why don't we say by March, we have to put some sort of timeline on it to keep this going. Love to have a product by March 1st for a plan.
Okay. So I'll let them know that it has to be done by then.
Yep.
That's fine. I'm sure they'll be fine with
And I
that.
would love to see it, I mean, whenever they have a draft of it, I'd love to see it so we could get things
All right.
moving even faster, potentially.
And you're taking your traps out of there May 1st, or when?
That's when we're allowed to start, yes. It takes a little time to get them in the water, but
And
that's,
how do you get traps out of there? By truck?
yeah, and trailer.
So you take the truck all the way down there to load it up?
I walk them out.
You walk
Them out to the little area that I have there, yeah.
Mhm.
over by the shed?
Mm-hmm.
Every part of lobstering is tough.
That's why we
You're not
don't
kidding.
have it.
Yeah.
No, so far it's been a decent living.
Well,
One more
let's,
kid to get through college and then I'll be in good shape, if I survive.
If you want to contact, John Rendon and see if he has any ideas about storage options.
Okay,
You can, or if you want me to, I'm happy to.
sure.
How
Oh.
many other lobstermen are in town that have storage issues?
To be honest with you, I don't know how many, because I actually fish out of Sandwich. That's where I've been out of there for 35 years. I do know most of the guys that do fish out of here. Some keep their gear at their house. Some guys, have been able to procure a piece of land over the years and keep their gear there. But there's 2 or 3 of them that I know of that keep it in their yards, you know. I probably don't have the environmentally sensitive issues that I have, so. But, I mean, that's, like I said, this is not something I'm trying to pull over on anybody. It was just all of a sudden, I had to get out of where I was because of a sick in-law that's going to be forced into a nursing home, and they have to sell the property to pay for it. So
Understood.
it was an ideal spot, of course. But
Well, stay in touch. And,
Absolutely.
March 1st, and in the meantime, we'll see if we can help you out
I
with
appreciate it.
with
Oh.
storage issues,
All right, well,
if we
thank you.
hear of anybody.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your time. And, yeah, as soon as I hear anything, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair.
That was a lot of work.
Up to you.
Not-
Yeah, thanks.
Bog language or South Street?
You can do him first, he was here, I got yours.
Okay. Well, maybe for once you don't need to be. Bog, wanna do some bog lease language?
Sure.
Sure.
Because actually, Steve, I wasn't, I have to take you under other business, so. I'm sorry about that.
Want to come up to the hot seat?
Mark? Oh, well, this is, I mean, it's not necessarily his lease yet,
Yes, we were doing so well for so long.
but if you're interested in the language,
I
yeah.
am interested in the language, and really the ball's in your court.
All right.
So Amy's given us some, I guess, notes for draft language. We have the former lease.
Yes,
and
you did.
Amy's given us a little more detail on what might be there.
I don't have an extra copy.
As a matter of process, Amy, I think we forward a draft eventually to the Board of Selectmen.
We do, but, so the traditional, and I'm happy to get you a copy of what we're talking about, Mark. The traditional language doesn't change, the size of the bog, payment changes and conditions change, so I didn't do the whole release of it, I just put, and Brad, thank you for adding your comments, of some additional conditions on the lease. So mine, the initial was in black, and Brad's comments are in blue.
What do you think the timetable is for putting this out for bid? I would imagine that we would want to have it well in advance of the growing season.
I would say if we finished this, if we agreed on language tonight or next time, I would immediately get it to the Board of Selectmen. I'm sure they would put it on a next agenda.
Yep.
And it would be out.
I would like to propose that we get our comments into a draft, because these are just truly notes, these are bullets at this
Right.
point. And then
Of
so we
course.
could have a draft that we could vote on next
Yep.
meeting.
That's fine.
Does that seem reasonable?
I mean, do you have to quantify what this financial compensation for fish kills? I mean, do you have to get some kind of specific language as to what the terms are if there are fish kills? Mitigation or?
Basically, there's state laws that can be pursued. And so at this point, I put a comment saying that I'd like to see the leasee responsible for financial repercussions if a fish kill does occur.
Is it per fish, or?
It's basically a per fish assessment based on economic value of the fish.
Of the fish.
It's a state statute, which is in our business. But the reason I put that there is just so that there would be some acknowledgement that it would be the responsibility of the leasee if that were to occur, as an incentive to have it not occur.
So if I remember from the last meeting, you were talking about the mesh screens, and would those kill fish?
No.
They save the fish.
Yeah, and I think fish kills are really avoidable.
It is.
And at this site, so I think that it's something that can really easily be avoided. The problem is, the last time, there were 2 that we know of. There could have been more, but there were 2 documented fish kills. And so I feel, you know, as this commission's in the care and custody of this property, that we should really endeavor to avoid that happening again. And so, that's my preference. I felt we could put in language that said that the leaseholder would be responsible for the equipment, meaning the nets, to keep fish out of the diversion, which is not a very large expense. And then there would be language on the seasonality at which the diversions would need to occur to protect the bog.
Right.
So, but there would be language that would say, okay, in this time of year, the net goes in. The
And
net's
that's kind of what I would need help from you,
right.
is the exact time periods, because I
Right.
don't know the exact time periods. I don't know if it's April 1 to June 1, or.
Right.
And this
That-
is for herring, correct?
Herring, no.
For river herring, and the natural resource director also would want to chime in on this as well.
Yep.
So that type of language I thought was really important.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't there last time. And it's, you know, there's a lot of interest to avoid it, and but I think I'd like to see some explicit language that makes it important. And so,
What about in terms of restructuring the bog, as far as sloping and resurfacing and getting the trenches to a certain depth?
you know,
or-
that was my interest. Obviously, we've kind of moved beyond that, was to naturalize things, but I think the bog needs to receive water to protect the plants, to help harvest. So if it's gonna be a bog, you know, if we find an acceptable bid and we move forward, then I think you have to allow that bog to receive water.
Right.
And so what you do then is you screen it off, and you have operations in addition to the screening, so you don't bring fish in.
Right.
It's not that hard to do.
And the other stuff, I think, would, as far as the ditches, that comes into maintenance of the ditches. You have to bring this bog back into
Right.
working order.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the big picture, if we were to go in that direction, but right now we're not. So if we don't have an acceptable bid, then maybe we can revisit that approach. But right now, we're looking to put this out to bid.
Okay.
Can I comment on a different aspect of it, the pick your own requirement?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we can really do that, because
Right.
people walking on the bog would have a detrimental,
Right.
I mean, even after the bog was picked by the lessee, people, especially, I mean, if you pick your own out there, you're gonna have everybody out there.
Yeah.
I think there would be detrimental impact to the bog vines when you do that, but it's a great idea.
I threw that out there as just a concept.
Can encourage people to go to Jenkins Bog and pick in there,
Yep.
because that's what they do already, in the little one. Actually in the Bell's Neck, that's an overgrown bog, still has cranberries.
And my thought really came from that first year when Craig Williams, you know, left it alone. There was quite a crop.
Yeah.
And it just was there. And it just, October came, and some people got plenty of cranberries, and then they just froze, and that got me thinking, wow, it would be nice if people would come in here and get some of these. But that's just something I put there. I think the more important thing is language to prevent impacts.
I agree.
Operations to prevent impacts. The three things that I have here that I think everyone should think about, and we should look really hard at the draft, are the timing of the lease, the language to prevent a fish kill, and then number three, I put out the concept of getting bids that address the potential to have organic farming. Those are the big three things. And I don't even know if that's feasible or not with a bog like this. I'm not an expert on organic farming. I'd just like to reduce that loading of, you know, nutrients, pesticides, herbicides as much as possible. And so I put in that language for us to think about. And
Can we have a cheaper lease if you do organic?
It's not a bad idea. I mean,
that's fine.
I mean, why would we allow anything but organic?
I think it's hard to
Well,
do.
because they said at that meeting
But if
that.
you can't do it, but if you can't do it, then you can't do it.
Because we're stopping it, you know, failure to properly maintain bogs will constitute a breach of lease. Then we're requiring organic, which some people were saying won't work. Are we?
Yeah.
I think we asked the people bidding to explain, you know, is it feasible, and what can you do to reduce that loading? I'm not an expert. I don't know the structure of this bog and whether it lends itself towards organic.
but I just know I'd like to see less, material put out there, so, I put that in to think about, there may be a better way to say it, but, ask the bids to have a proposal for options to go organic or options to reduce that loading. And,
Yep, that's a good idea.
And see what they can do, and if somebody can propose something that's organic, then that's great.
Yep.
I mean, we're not expecting that many people to jump in on this, I don't think.
No.
So,
I almost wonder if it's, you just draw the line organic or it goes back to natural,
I'm with you on that.
right?
I don't know if that's,
That really is a nice happy medium, because
I don't
we do want the cranberry farming, but at the same time, we're not willing to allow herbicides and pesticides to be sprayed into the water and everything else. And that's right in the water table, so there's no question about where that stuff's going. I mean, I could see an initial couple phases of accurate weed wiping or something like that to help to get rid of some of the PI, but fertigation and pestigation, I would be completely against.
yeah, well, it's, I agree with you, but I think that, this commission did vote to solicit bids, and so I think we need to do that. And so we can ask people to give their proposals on what they think is feasible.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think you might want to consider using the term best farming practice. To begin with, the property is not cleared for organic production.
Right.
So you would need to gain organic certification. That requires an investment of time and money. If that burden's going to, excuse me, fall on the grower, that's going to be his responsibility, but that person isn't going to move forward on that until there's a lease on the table.
Right.
Everything is predicated on the fact that the property is available to move forward. Best management practice would be best available for whatever it's suited for at that time. The intent may well be to go forward using natural methods, and that would be my intent. However, if there's a reason that comes up, it may not be labelable as organic, because there's some legal implications for that. So the word organic is a stumbling block.
Right.
I think I meant more, not in terms of what you're actually selling and being able to have it qualify as organic, but the actual farming practices of
Right.
not using herbicides and pesticides going forward. We can't do anything about the past.
Right.
But we can restrict what happens from day one on. I think that's where I was going, is that I think all of us want to see someone be successful there
Right.
with organic, but I don't think any of us want to see herbicides and pesticides being dumped into that place.
Well, I don't disagree with that at all.
So I think that's something that we have to really take a hard look at, because if it's past the point of being able to be successful,
Without
then we're
using-
past,
Right.
in my opinion. If you can go in there and clean it up and do what you've got to do and be successful being organic from here on, then I say more power to you. But
I picture, this going to bid, having bids come back in, and then it's a negotiated process that leads to a signed lease. And so I think
Right.
that your sentiments can get involved in that process, and I'm right with you on that. So I think, let's get language that encourages bidders to say what they're going to do for those practices.
Please feel free to send me your comments so I can incorporate them. I just wanted to write out something so I could incorporate we have into the lease. So what I can do is I can take this and incorporate it into the actual lease itself, so you can see it.
Yep.
did you have a chance to talk to Steve Senna from National Conservation Resource Services?
I have not.
I wonder if we can set up a meeting with him.
Who?
Steve Senna, he's from NCRS. He's an incredible resource
I
as
know
far,
Steve,
as
yeah.
far as being able to bring him into a situation and give you real expectations of viability of what you're actually trying to do.
He knows most of these bogs. He's
Right.
familiar with all these bogs in
Right.
town,
It's
so.
just in West Barnstable, I think, right?
His office is in Yarmouth.
Okay, Yarmouth. He'd be a great starting point to really know what we're up against here.
Well, we can, could we send him the
Language going.
draft? Or
Yeah.
Is that appropriate? I'd be happy to do that. I work with him on fish passage issues.
Just he doesn't need to see all the nitty-gritty of it, but the special conditions, if you will, yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, he'll have a sense of how feasible organic might be for that, and then
Fine.
if our language is, appropriate, and then it's up to the bidders to, I think, describe their anticipated best management practices. And,
Mhm.
So,
Fine. Well, I will have a clean,
how about, we should probably talk about the duration,
yeah,
because I think 10 years has been typically used, and what I felt like, we discussed this quite a bit about 8 years ago, and I know that back then, this commission was really concerned about what was happening there. And so, for me, I would almost favor a 5-year period with an option to renew for additional 5 years if things are going well. That's kind of what I would favor. I would imagine most farmers would want to have as long a period as possible. But I don't think we got paid for the last lease, so it just didn't work out that well. So that's why I put this language of having it as 5 years or a 5-year with a renewal.
you say there have to be a review.
Review with the option of, with a favorable review of getting your second 5 years.
Just have to, it's gonna take a little while for this bog to become fully operational again. So, I hear what you're saying. I'm just wondering if we'd have to give somebody a real honest shot after 5 years to,
Right.
if they did things correctly according to their lease,
Give them 10 years.
give them another 5 years.
The first 5 years is going to be crucial to getting it off the ground.
Right.
You've got 3 years of getting to a point where it's going to be balanced, and then perhaps go forward. And that's subject to change depending on the conditions as to what takes place. No different than anything else that would be grown.
But that's also my preference, so I think everyone take a look at the notes, and I think I really encourage everyone to get comments to Amy. I think it's pretty important.
Yeah,
that,
as soon as possible, please.
Yeah, I know no one was here from that last time, but we really spent a lot of time discussing this as to what to do with this property. And so I think this lease is an important step to, move that forward and see what we can do. And if we get the right, person in there to carry this on, that'd be great. Otherwise, we can reconsider, what we do with the property.
Do other towns on the Cape have lease bogs?
Yes.
Can we use those leases as a model for ours?
We could do a lot of research. I know the town of Falmouth has done this, and they're moving away from leasing. They tried organic, and there's been a movement in the town of Falmouth to, seek naturalized solutions. Every town's different. It would take a fair amount of research to, I think, dig that up. I think we've kind of,
I just haven't.
yeah, well, I think we've decided as, a commission to move forward with the bid process.
Yeah.
So I think we're going in that direction, but if we have time, we might want to look at other towns to see what they're doing. But I know of the town of Falmouth has said, okay, this is, we're going to try something different here. And I think the economics of the growers has also been part of this, where it just hasn't been paying off, and there's less interest in leasing some of the bogs.
Are there other bogs in the town that are available for lease?
Not right now.
So this is just the only one right
We
now?
have a couple other leases, but they're active leases.
Okay. So do we already have some kind of a in-house framework as to how those
We do, but these other bogs also are not part of a herring run, essentially.
Right.
We do, and I have those leases. I thought I sent them a while ago.
We've seen,
Send them to us.
yeah, we've seen them. One's a 20-year, but that's
Yes.
not
Yeah, it's
farm for
Leo
cranberries.
Kukunis, and
Yeah.
then Ray Thatcher
Right.
has leases as well, a lease with us as well.
So Mark,
Those are the three.
what were you thinking in terms of lease? leases.
You really need to have a 10-year window. What Brad had suggested about a 5-year review, that was something that I had looked at seriously for two reasons. If it's not acceptable to what's going on from your perspective, that's an opportunity to step away, and also from my
For
perspective.
you to step away, right, sorry.
Yeah.
So that's, could be favorable for
the grower.
Yeah.
Right, but it's got to be understood that that's not necessarily carved in stone. The option has to exist to go forward because the bulk of the work and the expense is in the early part of it.
I think you set terms as to what would be an acceptable 5-year review outcome. And everyone's going to hope that happens. And I think you go from there, just have simple terms in the lease.
Yeah, it's got to be clear, but I would really urge you to hang tight on the best management practice and stay away from the other aspect of it. Take into consideration the particular proposal that you receive from anybody that happens to be interested, and examine it and pick it apart and look at the opportunity from that perspective.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. The only thing I did hear that's concerning is, to your point, Brad, about the fine, if you will, for a fish kill. I understand your point, but if the management is appropriate, there's no reason for that to take place. To me, that's disturbing. The issue of the net, I think, should be Natural Resources Department. I think that should be somebody else's problem to go out and make sure that's secured, because that goes deeper than just the bog. On behalf of the grower, if there is a structure fabricated, supplied, and installed that would adequately keep out any aquatic life, that's more than sufficient. And I think the intent of that going forward is also sufficient. To extend into the net further out in the pond, to me, it's not necessary.
Yeah, I just,
I understand your point.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with you on this one. I think that bogs throughout the state, it is the bog owner's responsibility to not kill those fish and to screen their diversions. It's their responsibility. And so I would want to see the commission have that as a condition of the lease, is that responsibility is there. The previous leaseholder didn't care enough to really work on this, and we had some issues. So that'd be my interest. In terms of the language on compensation, I mean, that really speaks to a state statute. It doesn't speak to our jurisdiction. So I think we can discuss whether it's appropriate for the commission to have that. I would still want to have it the responsibility of the leaseholder to keep fish out of the bog. That's pretty standard. Bog owners have a right to water in many cases. They never have a right to kill the fish. Our town attorneys will look at this language, and they may say, you know what, I can't connect a state statute to this lease. That could well happen. And
well, I'm sure that's an arguable point, depending who you talk to.
Yeah. They might say we can't put that in there because it's not our statute to, enforce.
Yep.
But I would still want to see the commission, who's responsible for the property, to have some strong language on preventing fish from being killed. And that's why I put that in there as a suggestion, as an incentive.
I can understand that, but like I say, I would urge you to focus hard on sheltering the culvert that comes in there, and not so much the net, because honestly, I don't think the net's going to be as sound an option. And how the screen is fabricated and held over that line that comes in is gonna make all the difference in the world. If it's a flat screen, it's gonna clog. If it's a V-shaped screen, it's gonna allow the water and debris to flow by and still allow the water flow. But it's gotta be in such a fashion that needs to be secured to the existing structure. As simple as being able to slide it over the top and then let it settle into the mud so it's sound.
Here's
so
the
it can't
problem,
move.
Mark, is that lagoon that connects the reservoir to the bog,
Mhm.
you've got a flume there at the bog, and then you have somewhat of a natural opening at the reservoir.
Right.
You gotta keep fish from getting out of that lagoon, because the intake velocity for that flume, these fish can't fight against.
Well,
So-
that's the reason for the V screen, right at the flume.
They'll be impinged.
Hmm?
They'll be impinged.
Sucked in.
Yeah, the juvenile can't, they can't resist that velocity when it's time to flood the bogs. So that's why you need a secondary screening.
You know the diameter of the mesh?
The first net was 3/8, and the second net was purchased by the Department of Natural Resources, and that was, I think, either quarter or 3/8. And you have almost no intake velocity at that natural opening at the reservoir. It's problematic because you gotta maintain that net.
Mhm.
And it's in the water right now. I was ice fishing this weekend, and there it was. It was supposed to come out. And I probably should have really advocated that it's pulled out, but that net is in there right now in the ice.
Mhm.
And so that's not good for longevity of the net. But I think a well-maintained net there, and then a secondary screening to keep other aquatic life out will help. But the juvenile herring will be impinged on a screen that's right at that flume. That velocity when you've got water flowing through there.
Mhm.
So that's why, to me, these are all just mechanical things to work on that don't have a big cost associated with them. So I'm pretty comfortable that I can work with the DNR chief and Amy, and we can come up with solutions for this. So it's not a big deal, but I did want that language as an incentive. So I think let's hear from what the other commissions have to say about that, and then we'll get a draft together. And the draft will go to the Board of Selectmen, or go to our legal staff. You know, there'll be a lot of review.
Mhm.
What's the condition of the structures there, flumes, and are there boards in the flumes now?
It's an aluminum
Yeah.
flume, it's in good shape, the boards are there.
Flume is at the right height?
I think in the past, that what happened was that the bog operator needed water, he just let it rip and just didn't think about containment, a time of year, and fish got drawn in.
So the bog's probably full of fish right now?
No.
No, the fish have already migrated out there.
This hasn't been operated in about 3 years, so,
Well, there's always gonna be fish in there.
but there's always some sort
gonna
of
say,
something
are
in
we-
there.
There's gonna be something in there,
Yeah,
it always has been.
Sure, but
That's not gonna change.
migratory,
But
migratory fish heading out to the ocean, you know, you need to protect them from getting entrained, because they're really abundant, there's a lot of them.
Mhm.
And there are specific state laws to protect that fish, so I think there's a couple reasons why. Freshwater fish that come and go, I mean, they'll be around, you can't do much about that.
Right.
But these migratory fish have special protections.
What, seasonally, what would be the approximate dates you would expect to have that secondary line out there?
I would say in the spring, the upstream migration for the adults is going to be, you know, April 1st, maybe March 15th, through May. And the juveniles will want to exit starting probably July, right through end of November. The juveniles are most sensitive because they're passively moving downstream.
So with that window in between, there's really not much sense to take it out.
There isn't, but I think, you know, there should be language that has the bog owner, you know, communicate, bog operator communicate with the town and say, okay, I need water now.
Mhm.
And so then someone will go down there and check on the screening, you know, some process like that, just to make sure things don't slip.
Mhm.
And I think it's done throughout the state like this, and I think it's really possible.
Well, I would expect with just general communication, that can be achieved without too much difficulty.
I think so. Yeah, I think-
Because really, it's a matter of just being in touch with what's going on.
Yeah, I agree, but I do think that, you know, it's a big run of fish. You've got, it's not exaggeration to say you have millions of juveniles. And so when they're heading downstream, there's a lot of them, and you've got to keep them out of that lagoon. And then if they get into the bog, there's things you can do to get them back out safely too. It doesn't mean they all die. So I think all that, those operations, get that in the lease, and I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
All right, so we've got some homework to do.
I will put a more concrete draft on the next meeting. Please get me your comments if you can by middle of next week.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. To go a little bit out of order, this was last time Mr. Safran from 177 Forest Street was here. This would be other business not reasonably anticipated, so. We had a chance, Brad and I went to the site again to review it and found that the retaining wall portion is in the 50. And that the new building is larger than we thought, so. That's kind of where we stand. Brad wanted to see it in person, so we did that.
So what we are discussing tonight is, I guess, a response. We issued fines last time, two $200 fines.
It's not in the current, or, I'm not in here.
I noticed that.
So I guess we're just having an informal discussion tonight on what responses might be beyond the fines. We have a structure in the 0 to 50 that wasn't authorized, and we have a lot of building in the 50 to 100 that was in excess of what was authorized. So I guess we're just going to have a discussion with the property owner on how to fix this.
Yep.
Do we have a square footage yet on the excess building in the 50 to 100? Do we know that yet? We have approximate dimensions, it seems.
Right, essentially 6 feet. I moved what I thought was happening, I moved my structure just 6 feet closer to the water, but was still totally within the 50 to 100. And my architect misinterpreted what I said. And not only did we move over, but then added 6 feet more to the foundation. And I did not realize it until just 2 weeks ago when Amy said I would need a updated site plan for the rocks that were part of the old structure, what I was going to do with them in terms of placement on the property. When I got it back from the site person, not the architect, but the footprint, the engineer, yeah, I realized there was a major problem. And that's when I went right to Amy the next day and said, I've got a problem. It was not intentional. I don't live on that side of where it went out. So, I mean, and it didn't look like it was a lot bigger, but it is. And so the building itself stays within the buffer totally. I had a half wall, if you will, so I could put I have my door coming out of my cellar close to the edge, so I put a little foundation, partial foundation, so I could slope it without it getting into the door. But that part there is about 10 feet long, 2 to 3 feet is outside of the 50 foot, but the rest is there. But it's really so I can slope it so it doesn't go into the doorway. We have, like Amy and Brad did come over and look at it last week.
So
So that's where we are right now.
what you were approved for, the existing square footage before the demo
Right.
was 1,222 square feet. The proposed square footage was 1,334 square feet. What is the square footage now?
I would have to just add the 25 times 60. I'm sorry, times 6.
25 times 6 is 150.
Yeah.
So
That's
it,
very close.
not just with, now that's also the connection between the
That
barn.
does not include that. No, that's
But that's
another
bigger.
4 feet times 10 feet, 40
So
feet.
40, so it's 190
Right.
square feet larger, plus whatever the foot by 6 feet retaining wall is.
Yeah, the
So,
retaining wall.
retaining
And that's
wall.
strictly
So you're talking,
half of height. It's like 5 feet high.
yeah, height is not so much a concern as footprint. So say
Okay.
roughly 200 square feet,
Sure.
because you're talking 190 something. So to round numbers, 200 square feet. Your last application with us, or your application for us for this,
Yep.
you were required to do 224 square feet of native plants within the 0 to 50 on the south side of the lot, which is kind
Right.
of where your garden had been in the past.
Yep.
So that wasn't a whole lot.
Nope, it was gonna be on the right. We had a garden there, right on the other side of the driveway, and then some lawn, and it was gonna be on that part there that was closest to the water. Yeah, still in a little, because what happens is you have the pond goes up about, on one side of the property, about 8 feet, and about 7 feet on another part. So there's a bit of a hill, and then it's flat.
I mean, in my mind, what's in the 0 to 50, minus what is structurally necessary, right up on the 50, the excess is excess, and it's not, it could be removed and graded. What's in the 0 to 50 is in strict opposition to our 50-foot no disturb zone. What's in the 50 to 100 could be mitigated for potentially. There is some room on the site to do, I mean, if it's 200 square feet of additional space, we require typically more than a 1-to-1 ratio, put it that way, of mitigation. So I think there's room to do that within the buffer zone.
So we probably are asking for a revised plan to show the footage and have.
He did provide a revised plan, with the exception of the retaining wall, which you had sketched in, essentially.
Right,
But there
there's
is
that
a,
dark
there is
line
a,
on the
there
right.
is a
That's
site
the-
plan that shows the, larger footprint of the building.
Right, that's the one I
That was in your
asked out
packets
yesterday.
last time.
Yeah, last time.
So I'd like to hear from the other commissioners. I mean, this, to me, is a pretty significant violation and departure from the plans that were approved. So, I have ideas on what I think should happen, but I think I'd like to hear from everyone else. Do you want to start, Paula?
No.
Okay, start with Rob? Okay.
Hot seat as usual. I'm at a disadvantage because I haven't been there. I wasn't here at the last meeting either.
Right.
So I'm a little out of the loop here. So really for me to,
You can see, I can give you this too, just so you can see, I mean, seeing the site's important. The top one is what we approved, the bottom one is what happened.
I think you do have to get out there and take a look.
I haven't seen it either.
It's, to me, square footage wise, it's a pretty large departure from what was permitted, so I'm interested in fairly significant mitigation for the 52-100.
Can that extension be removed?
Yes.
The wall, yes,
It's a 1 foot wide
yeah.
board concrete with reinforcement.
Right, I was there,
Oh,
Barn's different.
but
Is that what we're talking
it
about?
didn't seem to be doing anything.
It is
Other
holding
than-
back a little bit of dirt, but it could be graded, and the purpose is to
Yeah.
keep it from the doorway that way there.
retaining wall straight ahead. The doorway to the cellar is right there,
So, Brad, what
close
are
to
we
the
talking about here?
foundation.
So here's
For me
what
to
we
go up
permitted,
5 feet.
Allow
and
this in the 52-100.
I either come
Yep.
this way
Came
or
in
this way. Going
this,
this way
which is
would
probably larger than
allow,
what we permitted, and then it's got a
I would need the
wall.
retaining wall, because that's where it's going down
So this
against.
was,
Okay.
You know what I mean?
passageway was added, and then this was expanded. So we need to discuss, you know, what to do with that, because this wasn't permitted. And then that
Just that
50, that 0 to 50 structure wasn't
Not just the
authorized.
wall, the structure, the
Seems familiar,
whole
doesn't it?
building is bigger.
We voted last meeting to
Be right
fine
back,
them
You look
Sorry.
straight ahead.
$200
You got the
for
retaining wall,
exceeding
and on the
their
left
approved plan, and
is an
then
extra
$200 for
6
exceeding their
feet,
work.
which I did not realize.
That's
Limit?
right. Now, yeah.
And-
Per day or?
No, just
Just
straight
one
600.
time?
We felt like we wanted to act right away, but
Mhm.
then I felt like I wanted to get there and take a look at it. So, pretty modest fine. But at the same time, that's been issued. And so now I think what we're looking at is, I'm favoring a fair amount of mitigation for this extra footprint, and I like the idea of building up this buffer along here, because you've got the pond right here. The pond is very close. So native plantings, but, you know, we're here to discuss it, that's all we're here to do. And then I favor removing that structure from 0 to 50.
We spend more time on after the fact than,
Right. So I don't think,
I had not realized it was 6 feet more until I was putting a new site plan together for Amy for the footprint for the hardscape, which was just 2 weeks ago. The
but it did
retaining wall is
exceed.
up, the foundation is up, the steel is in, but as soon as I realized there was a problem, I stopped work.
Right.
That's it.
He did
And
come to
I-
Amy and let us know.
I came right to Amy, and I,
But the work limit was clearly exceeded, and the work limit was right in the plans, and so, yeah, it's a concerning process here, that whatever led to this happened, so I think we need substantial mitigation for that 50-100, and, we're just talking informally, but I think that anything in the 0 to 50 should be removed. But you probably need to get there, Rob, and take a look at it.
Yeah, I'm
have you
curious.
never been to this property?
No, I haven't. I'm curious why there wasn't some kind of demarcation or delineation.
I
or
had put in
something.
stakes.
And they went over the
And
stakes?
I left, and when I got back, I have what they call sugar sand, and the new or the new cellar was 9 feet, so out 9 feet. So it's like, what I figured happened, he looked at the plan, doing the foundation, followed the plan, didn't look at the stakes, didn't look at the narrative, but I personally should have checked it out, and it just didn't look that much bigger when, they did the footing.
Right.
So,
Hard to tell when it's all dug up.
We're not gonna change the footprint of the building in the 50-100. I
Right.
mean, that's got steel beams, that's,
Right. Oh,
you know,
right.
I mean, we could, but it's not practical.
Right.
So I think we need to mitigate, for that, and then we need to, talk about where to mitigate, and then, again, I favor taking out the structure.
That extension,
Yeah.
The retaining wall.
Yeah.
does it help?
I think
Is
it
a
helps.
mistake that helps?
Well, what it does is I think it builds the soil up to help hold the soil back, so you're not gonna have erosion of soil come near the entrance.
Right, because right now, it's like 5 feet right by the 5 feet.
Right.
6, right by the foundation. So you got my foundation here, and the door literally is like 1.5 feet in, the doorway to the cellar. So either I have which I did, that retaining wall, not realizing it was intruding into the 50-foot do not disturb, and it was gonna come this way.
But it wasn't in the plans initially, was it?
Not initially, no.
Right, so here's the thing, to me, you should have come to Amy or brought to the attention of the commission as to this additional structure, so, to me, it's a pretty significant violation. If the commission wants to keep it, you know, it's an option, but I would want to have an enhanced fine to go with it. So those are kind of the options in my mind. Either you take it out, because it shouldn't be there. It wasn't in the original plans, and there was no effort to come in and say, hey, we want to put this thing in.
Right.
The work limit was, you know, went right past the work limit. So I think those are the options from my mind, is either remove it or have a substantial fine for that to allow it to stay. Mitigating for the footprint is not going to, you know, do a whole lot.
Is there a silt fence work limit visible there, that it was there?
Yeah, it was right, it's right around there.
And he still went beyond it?
Well, it's beyond, because when there was no foundation at all before. I mean, cellar, really. The top of the soil was only a foot below the bottom of the house. When he dug out 9 feet for those 2 pieces, there was a lot of sand. So we put the silt fence, and it was around there, but a little further out. And we also did it where the cesspool is, we had to go on the other side of the cesspool, because that what was there also. So it's on the other side of that, the silt fence. So there was more room for that there.
I don't know if you can fine anymore, because it was fined for structure in the 0 to 50 under the bylaw. It was fined under the Wetlands Protection Act. You can only fine $300 per violation. For a day. And, I mean, when he came in and told me about this, and it was issued, and, you know, now that we're having these discussions, I mean, but what to do, you can't fine while we're in these discussions. So, in terms of daily type things, we're in limbo right now, so.
Okay.
I don't think we really can't fine anymore.
We've already fined.
We've already fined.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I motioned to fine for the exceedance of the footprint in the 50 to 100 and the work limit, but I did the 0 to 50.
It's in the 0 to 50 under the bylaw, and under the Wetlands Protection Act, I did for just the violation of the excess in the entire buffer zone.
Okay. Well, that's, I put that out there as something to consider, because my preference is to remove it. But if we could, if for some reason we didn't favor that, then I would want to see some type of compensation more than just a footprint mitigation. We're gonna ask for some type of mitigation for the 50 to 100 exceedance. So, tonight, we're just discussing it.
No, you can act, and you can vote to issue an enforcement, to do what you, to get this moving.
Yeah. Well, that's my preference, is remove that concrete piece that's in the 0 to 50, and then to mitigate 3 to 1 for the exceedance in the 50 to 100, and.
So that would be 600 square feet approximately.
Right, and I really favor having mitigation right adjacent to that structure along the resource area. That's the place that I'd like.
Top of the bank there?
Yeah, I'd like to see some buffer to the pond. And if 600 can't fit there, then look someplace else too. But I think that would be meaningful mitigation for that type of a violation.
If we request that extension be removed, would that cause issues with erosion?
Oh, I think there's things you could probably.
I'd have to.
It's such a steep, if I remember, it was a steep bank, so it looks like it's holding something there. If that is removed, would water, would there be water erosion? Would there be wearing away of land there?
I don't think it's that steep. I mean, it is up on the top of the wall and then at the bottom, or where the wall is. So it's not too, I mean, there's a slope, but it's not.
No, there's not, but because where the door is for the cellar, I'd have to put some kind of
Can you move?
coming this way
Can the
versus
door-
this way.
Can the door move to the?
It's already, well, yeah, it's already in
side of the
it's already in the
wall.
foundation, but, yeah.
This also, because technically we haven't approved, we can't, this is just enforcement talk right now. In order to approve the new foundation footprint, would need an amended order. At that point in time, the planting could be more fleshed out.
Okay.
So you could say that an enforcement to remove the section of the retaining wall that's in the 0 to 50, with the exception of like right where it starts, that's structurally kind of important.
Yeah, the retaining
It's
wall
structurally
is part of the
important.
structure, yeah.
Right, so right next to the structure itself, you have to keep, but other than that, have a month to file the amendment.
I mean, having not been on the site, is it possible to remove the structure and regrade that area so that that wall isn't required?
That's what I'm saying, the wall would go.
Right, but I mean, but also to keep everything from migrating towards his house?
I'm
Well,
sure Steve would welcome you out to the site.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I
please
definitely
come
need to
out.
come and take a look at
Because
it.
he's
My expertise.
landscaping.
Yeah, the landscaping part, I was going to be putting as part of the structure, because Amy said with what I wanted to do with all the excess stone that were part of the structures originally. I was gonna make a couple walls and stuff like that and a walkway to the doors that are within the
50 to
buffer,
100,
yeah.
Is there enough room around that structure where that structure could be planted? And just have the native planting start right there?
Well, he needs a little egress.
You wouldn't want it, yeah, you need
Yeah.
egress around
He
the
needs a little-
house.
He needs a little room, and I think you could maybe reduce that slope and then, plant something there to stabilize it. And maybe even have something right on the 50. I don't know if you put timbers or just, plantings or something. But he needs to get by to walk alongside the building, so I'm proposing that we build up that bank across from there with some plantings that it would help buffer. What I worry about is 20 years from now, 50 years from now, whenever, someone else comes along and just plants a beautiful lush, turf lawn here, right up to the pond. And so that's what I'm concerned about. It may not be your intentions, but I've seen these things over the years, things
Well,
change hands.
you've got the flat, you can see where he's actually got like the top of the hill. After that, it was a pretty steep slope to the water.
Right, but on
But
top of
from
that bank.
that top of the bank over, I'm planning to plant grass. I mean, there was grass before.
Well, I think this is a mitigation discussion, so I think, I'm
What it,
very
Turn
interested.
for getting a larger
what I'm
structure.
proposing is that at the next time meeting, whether it's in 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
Well, you'd have to file within a month's time.
Oh, okay. That, as part of that, I have my site plan with my proposed walkways and everything else, and the mitigation area.
Yep.
And then we can discuss that.
That
thing.
sounds fine, might as well discuss it all at once.
Because
Now that
the-
we're directing you to do the amendment
Yeah,
and seem to be moving along with that.
because
so.
that corner that you want to build in, the barn, not even my structure, but the barn, is very close, or the closest to the water, because that was a working cranberry farm. And they just brought, they have a couple channels that they would bring in the cranberries into the barn. So they wanted it as close as possible. The corner of that barn there is right outside the 50-foot when I worked on the barn before. So I'll put something together and we'll see how we do.
Yep, I'm happy to go,
Yep.
talk about it with you before you formally file.
Okay,
But I would say, I mean, February 1st, I mean, just make it it's 2 days shy of a month, I guess you could say.
oh, yeah, no,
The amendment
I
is
just need
not a
to
big
think about it.
form, it's really a new, it's just the plan, augmented plan with your
Yeah.
patios.
with
or-
updated
or
narrative.
Updated narrative,
Yeah,
really look at the plantings and,
yep,
and it would be another,
The
it
whole
would be a
thing.
hearing.
Yep.
Okay?
I want to stress, though, that, you're talking about planting grass along there. And,
that was there before.
well, yeah, well, this is a really significant violation.
Yep.
Your explanation to me is not very satisfactory.
Okay,
And so I'm looking for some real significant mitigation along that edge. And I think it's something that you can expect from the commission. So you want to plant grass right up to that border?
where the grass already was, yes.
Well, I have a problem.
That's what I would
with-
like to do.
I mean, this,
I'm not sure how far I'll get, but at the same time,
all right, we'll
it
discuss
was grass before.
I know.
Do you want a sense of the commission?
Yeah, that would be helpful. If I'm out on a limb on this, then that'd be good to know. But, I'm not very, I don't know what the right word to say is, but this type of expansion doesn't typically happen without some significant communication breakdown. And so, this is disturbing to me.
Well, it's disturbing to me, and I would go along with what Brad says.
Me too.
But if it's a 3-to-1, and my property unfortunately is almost 80% within the buffer, that it wouldn't be just there, but I have what we talked about originally, where to put the original mitigation. There's other areas further to the right, if you will, looking at the water, or the left, that would fit the 3-to-1.
We're gonna look at the areas that would most environmentally improve the buffer zone.
I'd like to go out there again.
It's not so much of a, well, we
Yes.
want it, you here or there, there's a reason for why, I mean, to protect the top of slope, to create a better buffer, those are the areas, when we're looking at it, are gonna be the areas that would be planted.
And it would educate me also.
I'm definitely gonna go take a look at it too.
I would like to go, if we go out to talk to him, I'd like to go with you, if that's possible.
I'm not gonna, I mean, I can make another site visit, we've had several.
You said the open meeting law?
Yeah, I mean.
If you
we
just want to
can-
let me know when you want to come over, I'll definitely walk over with you and you can see everything and whatever.
I mean, I can take you, but
I'll probably stealth it over there in the next couple
been
days.
to a couple
Take a
times.
sniff it out.
If you could let me know so that I can be there if possible. I'm back
If we
and
have
forth.
significant snow, if we're gonna be able to see it.
You'll see
Yeah,
the slope,
yeah.
you'll see the.
See the slope.
I'm
Yeah,
happy to
if it's
share,
significant, I mean.
The snow's not gonna last.
Yeah,
so,
I'm with you.
I mean, I'm happy to go again before the next meeting. I can't
Next.
promise that I'm gonna go ahead, before the
Okay.
next meeting. I'm more than happy to, put you,
Yeah.
give you Steve's contact information, and you can go and see it, but you can't really go in force here.
We won't see the amendment till
I'm
before
not
the
gonna
next
be at the
meeting,
next
right?
meeting.
You won't, no, because he's gonna have to come up,
He's gonna
I
move.
mean, it's gonna take a little while.
Okay.
So, do you want to hold off on the wall discussion until then, or would you like to do an enforcement on the wall? You wanna hold off on the wall until then?
I just
not
wanna see
hurting
what-
anything
I just
in
wanna
the
see what the
meantime.
I
possibilities
don't mind
are.
waiting.
Alright, let's just hold
Yeah,
off
I
then.
don't mind waiting and
Just
just having a plan.
Keep in mind that is a strong possibility that that wall may be asked to be removed.
Okay, so February 1st, and feel free to, for the amendment, feel free to, for the filing. That'll put you on either the end of February or beginning of March for a hearing. And feel free to set up a meeting with me
Oh, definitely, yeah,
for the filing. Okay?
yeah. And when Amy gives you the information, I would like to be there when you come on site.
Yeah, just let him, yeah.
Yep.
I'll give you, I'm not gonna give you theirs, but I will.
No, that's fair.
I'll
Oh, no, that's
communicate
fine.
with you ahead of time when.
Or I will
we
give
get
you
over there.
his information and you can
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
thank you. Stay safe.
All right, what do we have next?
Okay, let's go back in order here. So,
We've got 2 orders.
2 orders that we haven't done. Let me get this in order here.
You have another copy of the revised with the wall that I can bring with me? Because I have the one that has the original accepted plan, but I don't have the
I didn't give
the
that one
above and
too?
beyond.
I thought I handed both of them to you.
I have copies.
Do you want that one?
Just single copies.
There
You
were
mind if I
2
take this one?
plans that I,
Okay.
Yeah, I have them, but I don't think
Can't
I
make
have.
I'm
that
good.
meeting anyway.
We have them
I'm
from the
good.
last meeting.
yes, they were in last meetings, and I can get you more.
No,
And I don't mean to be short, I've been to the site several
Actually,
times.
that's an extra though.
Yeah, I know.
That shows they drew in that little piece there,
Okay.
so
I know.
you can have that.
Thank you.
That is everything but the wetland elevation.
Okay. It's just hard for me to, I mean, if it's not gonna be feasible to remove that wall, that's what I have to look at, you know?
Yeah,
Can that wall come out without it seriously impacting that building?
And I feel that it can.
I think so.
you could also reinforce somehow that side if you needed
That
to.
you could seal up that door and fill it in,
And move the door.
move the door.
Okay, so we have 2 more orders.
Stink to do, but.
I just recently printed them off. I did send them, sorry. I thought I sent them last week, and then I looked and I said, I don't think I sent them. So Tide River Nominee Trust for Lawrence Damon, 44 Chase Street. This was the pool shed fence on 44 Chase, relocation of the driveway.
This is the one that we went to.
Mm-hmm. And Lynn Hamlin came back with a plan that showed you wanted, that corner where the pool fence was gonna be was right on the 50. You wanted it 5 feet off, she did that.
Good.
So,
How about this number 7? Is that what we asked for?
let me
That
look. Hold on.
slow-release organic fertilizer may be used in that lawn area? Is that
Yes.
inside the pool, I
We
think?
talked about that.
Is it inside the pool or the whole 50 to 100? Because they're gonna have grass inside the pool fence.
It was in the 50 to 100 as well. Lynn made a big pitch for that, and
I was blown away by things she said. It's not a problem, she
we
says.
have, the thing is we have very different we have different language in different places of our regulations that talk about lawns.
Right.
We have some places where it says, okay, normal lawns are prohibited, and then we have areas where it does say, she took this right from our regs, or slow-release organic fertilizer may be used, and then the 1 pound per 1,000 square feet, so we need to clean that up.
But is it existing lawn that's there?
It
or-
is.
It is existing lawn?
Yep.
Okay, so for new lawn,
I think new would be different, but,
we're asking for routinely asking for no fertilizer
Right.
use in 50 to 100. I think our regs give us the latitude to say what we want to have there.
right.
And I think it also has this recommendation here. And my concern, what she was saying that lawn fertilizer is not a big deal. It's not a big problem, and
I know. I don't agree with that either.
But anyways,
Proper application.
yeah, if number
Proper
7 is
type,
what we
proper
approved,
application. Yeah, we didn't say no to that.
yeah. I just worry about this, another green as can be. But if it was long before, I suppose,
Right.
that's the only comment I had on that one, I think.
I mean, you can always say, from this point on, no more, right? Regardless of how green the lawn is?
I think if it's an established turf lawn, 50 to 100, we haven't been doing that.
I mean, we were gonna tell 2097 that they couldn't.
Right, we were gonna say
you
organic
know?
or something
We have a
like
couple
that.
that we've been telling people.
Right.
Walker Woods, that one violation with the pool, we told them, that was already, so I think we
Well,
have.
that was a new house.
I think we have a little bit of a, I think we have a
That was
little
a new
history
house.
here of doing that.
Yeah, there's
I
a
mean,
little-
what would be better, but better than this, would it be one-time annual organic
Well,
fertilization?
I think if we didn't specifically say something, we can't, we
Right.
moved on this. So
Right.
I just want to double check that's what the motion was.
Yeah, there was no,
That's
yeah,
fine.
there was some discussion, but we didn't change that.
Yeah. No, that's what we voted on, so that's okay. To me, it's one of the few areas where you can actually make a difference at a very local, level, is to reduce that nutrient load in lawns.
I mean, I don't know why each request that we're processing, why we don't, as part of that, automatically bring them up to speed with our bylaw, that they're grandfathered in. I don't see the benefit environmentally of grandfathering anything ever. So when one comes across in our purview, why we don't automatically, as part of that, okay,
Define it.
we're accepting your application here, but as part of that, from this point on, 0 to 100, no.
How do you,
Kind.
if you have a turf lawn,
Yeah.
say you've had one forever,
Right.
and all of a sudden you stop fertilizing it, you may water it, but if you stop fertilizing it and it doesn't grow as well, would it then cause more erosion? Is it just gonna, like, what?
Part of it is
I'm just,
some lawns require a lot more care than others. You
mhm,
know, I mean, if you told me, Rob, no more herbicides or pesticides, what I would do is probably core aerate some more favorable seeds in there that could take those
mhm,
drought conditions and go from there. I mean, no is no,
mhm,
so we've got it's hard to hold, you got a brand new house next to an existing house, and they both do projects.
right,
And we're gonna
one
hold
can
this one
have it,
house up with nothing, and we're gonna let his next door neighbor do that.
I
We
understand,
need to be
yeah.
consistent across the board.
Mhm,
And move the mentality in that direction.
Right.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I
if that's
agree.
the way that we set that bylaw to be regulated, then I think we need to hold everybody accountable to that.
mhm,
It's been tough. I know we've asked at times, would a proponent object if we put this in? We've asked, we've done that before in the 52-100. New construction, it's automatic. But we haven't really pushed the envelope. We could ask for the slow-release organic fertilizer, put a number 7 in to a developed lawn and go for that. So some of it's an education process. I know the town of Marblehead has gone to this in the 0 to 100 organic only, and it's being pitched as a great success. People are saving money by using less fertilizer.
good,
Composting has become
mhm,
a lot more popular, and it's actually incredibly effective.
Yeah.
And it also does give you the opportunity in composting to sow in different seeds, so that
mhm,
while you're phasing out one, you're introducing another.
mhm. Good idea.
Well, we should, look at our language and think about this and try to get consistent. I've always, if I could wave a wand, I'd love to see less fertilizer in the 52-100. Just, you look around town, it's just unbelievable the change, in my eye, in the last 20, 30 years, to just the greenscape. It used to not be that way. So,
We discuss fertilizing all the time, but what about in the winter for certain houses within the 100 that put salt on their driveways?
You just can't, I mean, it's not good either, but I mean, how do you regulate all this?
that depends on the resource area, too.
Yeah,
With the herbicides and the pesticides, I think the first thing that you target is the certified applicators, the people who are commercially getting paid to put it down.
mhm,
You send them a letter, and you tell them exactly what the bylaw is, and then you tell them what the fines are. And you wait for someone to be the example.
mhm,
Well, we discussed this before and previously, and we also discussed the possibility of finding both the homeowner and the applicator.
Right.
mhm. You
So
can,
can we tweak our bylaw so that it says that? And then be really proactive and really, instead of sitting back waiting to find people, be on the forefront of educating and maybe even have an in-house seminar someday
Well,
where
it should
we
be a
invite the
concerted
companies.
effort with planning and health and all these other departments,
right,
and
right,
I've
right.
mentioned it before.
Was it 3 years ago that we were researching what other towns had done for
Yeah.
fertilizer use? And
I had all the.
3 years ago.
I have notes on that. But I'd say if we have a quiet meeting this winter, let's revisit that. Let's throw an hour at it. And,
I know in talking with John from Orleans, they have 0. They don't allow anything.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't go back after the fact. And,
Check it.
Yeah.
but you know, it's like, if we're gonna do it, let's do it.
Oh, I agree. I especially certain
Grandfather
resource
doesn't really-
areas, you know, anything we can do to reduce that nutrient load is really important.
Right.
So,
Right.
all right, I'd say we revisit that, and otherwise, I have no comments on the special conditions for 44 Chase Street.
Sorry, I wasn't even part of that. I horned in over here.
No, I love it. Yeah, I think we need to revisit it, and,
We've got to be consistent.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But if the ultimate goal is to have less environmental impact, whether it was there before or whether it's new now, who cares? The goal is still the same goal.
I agree. I think there's been a mentality shift in the last 2 or 3 decades. It's a very powerful force that'll be hard to just go cold turkey on. I think we have to educate people and, you know, have our bylaws be really clear and then be consistent.
If I'm not mistaken, when we came in front of the Conservation Commission, when we were building the house, they were very emphatic about using only organic on our lawn, because we're on the pond, and they were very emphatic, so why,
Until it's enforced and regulated, it's never gonna push the industry to do better. And I think people's comments are, well, you know, the organic process and the corn husks and all these things, they're a lot more expensive and they're not as effective. But until you force that industry, which is profit-driven and lazy, they just want to keep doing the same thing. Until you force them to move to another technology, they're never going to.
Yeah.
It's there,
Oh, yeah.
but they don't want to switch the way that they do things. They want to keep it the way that it is. But, you know, you just say, you know what, no more of this, you know?
Did you see the presentation from the guy from Marblehead? It was the community center a few years ago. It was really compelling. He said it's saving people money, and people are buying into it.
Right. Definitely.
You know, he said it's working.
was that the use of only organic or nothing?
I think they're allowing organic in the 0 to 100, but it has to be organic, and they've really scaled back the use, so it's not like nothing. Some towns have discussed that. I think we even discussed that at one point.
Really?
And I think it was felt like it'd be really hard to do for existing lawns with irrigation in the 50 to 100. So, yeah, let's revisit it.
When they told us organic only,
Was that here? Because we haven't really done that too. If it's new,
that was 7, 8 years ago, John Chatham
yeah. Yep,
was here. And I'm pretty sure, because that's all we've ever used,
right.
is organic.
Was it newly constructed lawn?
Yeah.
Yeah,
New-
so
it was new
that was kind of a John Chatham thing, where I would think, you know, soon after that, I started saying, let's have no use for newly constructed lawn in the 50 to 100, no fertilizer. And that was probably, you know,
Well,
6.
I'm not in violation, but we use
No,
organic.
no, it's whatever your order says.
Yeah.
And I think it's an evolution of, you know, the way people have their practices, and so I like what Rob's saying. Just, I'd say, Amy, let us know when we have some room on an agenda.
Yeah, I have to look. I haven't even looked at next
I know.
month.
All right,
Or
so
next.
I'm gonna move, unless someone has any comments, that we approve the order of conditions for 44 Chase Street.
I'll second it.
Is that all those in favor?
Aye.
Please sign.
Carries. And then I have no comments for the next one, it's just the site, the sewage disposal system.
This may be coming back to you because I had mentioned it, you know, I'd quickly run it by Board of Health, but they really had to sit down and look at it, and they don't meet some of critical requirements of the Board of Health. So they may be coming back to you for an amendment. But
So
as
what do we
is,
do
this
about this?
stands.
What do we do about this? Do we approve it?
Yeah, we can't not. We approved it, and if there's any changes due to the Board of Health requirements, they're gonna have to come back to us for an amendment.
Okay.
We're pushing a tight tank on it.
Yep.
But as is, I mean, they don't have a Board of Health permit yet, but we approve this, we need to get it out, and then they need to amend it.
Okay, this says no fertilization is allowed without permission from Conservation Commission.
Well, because this one's like in the soup. This one's literally at elevation 4.
This is the one
On the
behind
water.
the Dairy Queen, right?
Yeah. It's a landscaping
Right.
company. I don't think they would anyway, there's nowhere to do it, but it's literally, I mean, this place is literally in the marsh,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
that's why I put that one, I went out on a limb there.
Any comments on this order? No? I move that we approve the order for 4/37/28.
I'll second.
Seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have 3 ayes and you're abstaining?
I'd have to, yeah, I wasn't
Yeah,
part of it.
so 3, 1 abstaining.
We do need a signature, it doesn't necessarily
I'd be glad to.
mean, it just means it's a legal document.
Sure.
And we have one more cert of compliance. And I'm probably gonna put the minutes on for the next time, because Brad, I haven't had a chance to review your changes. Cert of compliance for 54 Uncle Beanie's.
Oh, that,
It was
That-
found during some deed research. Very few conditions. This was done in 1984.
wow.
So Nikki essentially looked at whether or not it was in the right footprint. Because that's essentially all the condition, there was really no conditions on this one.
Okay.
So she found that it was built according to the plan that we had at the time. Yeah, there's like there's no special conditions. How bad is that?
Even that shed? That shed was originally proposed and constructed as is? Or on that same footprint? I thought someone had mentioned that that shed had greatly increased in size over its original version.
54?
Yeah,
Is this Uncle Vini's at the house that we've been looking at, that we
it's like
approved
second to
everything?
last on the left that we approved.
No,
Oh, this is a different property.
this is a cert of compliance on, this is a really kind of dilapidated place.
Yeah,
It's
with
not the shed.
a huge, it doesn't look like a shed, it's like more like a building.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
Not the house we
It's on the
discussed the driveway.
right as you're driving down to
Oh.
Red River.
Yeah, no, this is,
this one's
I actually, the
different.
new applicants have already, or the new buyers, or the buyers have already contacted me and wanting to do a whole new land management plan to get rid of the invasives, and they've already, so.
Gotcha.
No, this is a different property, but this is on the brook.
Oh,
Right before, if you're going down to Uncle Vini's,
Mhm.
towards the water.
Yep.
It's on the right.
Yep.
Right before the brook. The house right after the brook is the one we've had problems with.
yes,
Right before the brook, we haven't. And it
So-
seemed pretty responsible new owners.
okay.
But the house, essentially, I mean, we had to look at the footprints. That's all we had to look at. And the house was built
That was built in 84.
84.
That was our baseball field when I was a kid. Now there's just big pines all over the place.
Yeah, it's pretty overgrown.
Wow, it was an old farm patch that we played baseball in, and then
Yep.
2 houses came in. They were set back, okay from the brook. They weren't, I don't think they were right on the brook. But I'm sure the plan's a plan. Pretty close.
29 feet.
Oh, boy, that's,
Whoops.
Back in the day.
wow.
A home run was made it in the creek.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't our land, we just viewed it as our land, because it
Right.
was right there. Yep, okay, so I guess I'll motion that we approve this certificate of compliance for 54 Uncle Vini's Road.
second,
Seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Brad, I got your changes for the minutes. I haven't had a chance to look at them.
Yeah, pretty minor, except for one.
I mean, do you want to review them now, or do you want to hold off?
I'd say it depends if the others have looked at it already. If others have, then let's punch it out, otherwise hold
I
off.
only got it, I mean, I only
Yeah,
gave
that's
it to
right.
them
Yeah,
now,
that's right.
so, I mean,
Yeah.
I think next meeting's a little lighter than this one.
Time to punch out.
And just quickly on Chloe's path. So we'll do it next time, December
Okay.
6th, and I'll have mine. I'm about halfway done with November 1st. Nikki and I are doing minutes. So, Chloe's path, this is the subdivision on Sisson
Oh, yeah.
Road. Just so you guys know, they do have a stop work on them right now. And so if you see anything other than reinstating the silt fence and the straw wattles out there, that's a no-no, until they come and get it lifted. They had a pretty big breach in their limit of work that caused siltation down towards the wetland. And I just went out there, last week because noticed the road drainage components being delivered, and I said, I should check on this. And noticed that it's probably been breached for a while. So they have a stop work. I met with Peter Donovan, the builder, or down there, and he knows what's going on. He's hopefully gonna have his excavator, reinstate the limit of work. And I told him we need something from an engineer stating that the limit's actually in the right place. I need something certified saying that it's in the right place. So we had approved just the road, and only part of the road was jurisdictional. So but just so you know, in case you drive by and see stuff going on, it should not be. Just call me and let me know.
I'm by there every day.
Unless they're putting in the limit of work, basically, after they put in the limit of work and certify that it's correct, then I'll lift it. They have to remove all the stuff that's silted in by hand.
Really?
Because you can't get a machine in there. It's pretty sensitive, and Natural Heritage had a ton of conditions on this project. I've never seen them so highly regulate a project as they did this. They have like 3 pages of conditions on this thing.
Box turtles?
Box turtles and water willow stem borers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's why you knew exactly what it was. I was so impressed. I thought you just remembered that from 2 years ago hearing.
Enforcement work lately.
It's been exhausting, honestly.
I know, it's a lot.
It's just,
You're doing a good job
it
with
beats you
know.
down. I'm
I
sorry
know.
I can't do more, but it just seems one after another. They keep coming.
It doesn't make you any friends,
No. So, that's it, folks.
All right.
Okay.
We need a motion to adjourn
Motion
and
that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.